Chapter 536. Rumble. As Orloff screamed in terror, the apocalyptic beam of light arrived in front of Orloff in the blink of an eye. However, just as the beam of light was about to pierce through the bound Orloff, the space in front of Orloff began to distort. With a buzzing sound, a layer of dazzling golden light suddenly appeared, forming a ripple that wrapped around Orloff. The next moment, there was a huge explosion as the beam of light struck Orloff. To be more precise, it struck the ripple on the surface of Orloff's body. The terrifying shockwaves of the explosion spread out, instantly filling the entire shattered void battleground and spreading through countless material planes to the entire celestial realm. Lord Orloff is fine. Did he receive the attack? Just as I expected, Lord Orloff is unable to harm the owner of the All-Heaven shop, but it's impossible for the owner of the All-Heaven shop to harm Lord Orloff. In that case, the two of them are evenly matched? Seeing the completely unharmed Orloff surrounded by the golden ripple, the spectating gods all cried out in surprise. No, this aura, it's an over-god. Unlike the other gods, the expressions of the death god, the destruction god, and the life god changed drastically when they saw the dazzling ripple appear. Then, they looked at each other, their eyes filled with astonishment. Apart from the three elemental gods, the expressions of the elemental gods also changed. They looked at each other, then stared blankly at Orloff. The one whose expression changed the most was none other than Orloff, who was surrounded by the dazzling ripple. At first, he was startled, but when he came to his senses, his expression instantly turned respectful. Lord Overgod of Fate, many thanks for your help. Orloff took a deep breath and hurriedly cupped his fists towards the void. What? An overgod? Could it be that the only reason Lord Orloff is unharmed is because of the overgod? So the overgods really do exist. But where is the overgod? Why can't I find him? Hearing Orloff's voice, the expressions of the gods of the celestial realm instantly froze. They immediately looked around as if searching for something. Let's stop here. From now on, sovereigns are forbidden from fighting each other. Violators will be stripped of their godhood. Suddenly, a light voice drifted from the sky. Its source could not be found, but it seemed to be everywhere, filling every corner of the heaven realm. This voice wasn't loud, but it carried a supreme might that made one's heart tremble. Just as everyone was immersed in the content of the voice, the entire heaven realm suddenly shook. Following this, a boundless, resplendent light filled the heavens and the earth. The air was filled with dazzling runes that intertwined and flashed. Finally, they gathered above Orloff's head, forming a black-clothed youth who appeared to be around 16 or 17 years old. Greetings, Overgod of Fate. The chief sovereign of destruction, the chief sovereign of death, the chief sovereign of life, and the other chief sovereigns of the elemental gods immediately bowed towards the black-robed youth. Just like Orloff, their expressions were incomparably respectful. He's the overgod of fate who created the celestial realm. Lord Supreme God is also a human. No, the overgods are the natural laws of the world. They can appear in any form. Looking at the black-clothed young man, the spectating gods came back to their senses and hurriedly prostrated themselves in front of the black-clothed young man. Are you asking me to stop? Unlike the others, Chu Bei's expression did not change at all even in front of a overgod, let alone show respect. What do you mean? The overgod of fate looked at Chu Bei. His gaze focused, and the void shattered. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It was also at this moment that the three higher planes, Hell, the Life Realm, and the Netherworld, began to move at the same time. Just like the Heaven Realm, countless resplendent runes surged out of the three higher planes. Soon, these runes intertwined to form three figures. In the blink of an eye, they also arrived in the Heaven Realm, hovering between the Overgod of Fate and Chu Bei. Those are the overgods of destruction, death, and life. The four overgods actually appeared at the same time. All of this is probably thanks to the owner of the All-Heaven shop. I have no regrets coming to the Heaven Realm this time to see the four overgods. The powerful gods, including the three chief sovereigns of the laws and the 6 chief sovereigns of the elements, immediately prostrated themselves in front of the three figures. The three overgods glanced at the gods indifferently and nodded slightly. Beta, you're still so impatient. Don't tell me you still want to attack these little fellows? The overgod of life had the appearance of a young girl with 2 ponytails on her head. Angie, you don't have to care about my business. The overgod of fate looked coldly at the overgod of life. Clearly, even though they were all overgods, there was still a difference in their relationship. We're just here to watch the show, the overgod of destruction said with a smile. Chu Bei swept the 3 new overgods with his gaze, but the look on his face didn't change much. Earlier, when he attacked me, where were you? Chu Bei's gaze landed on the overgod of fate again, and he questioned with incomparable calmness. What? Are you unhappy? The overgod of fate snorted coldly, and a wisp of golden light shot out from his finger. Bang! With a low rumble, the 5-clawed golden dragon in front of Chu Bei exploded, turning into a rain of light and dissipating. Heavens! That 5-clawed golden dragon that could injure Lord Orloff was actually so weak in front of the overgod of fate. That's an overgod. He represents the laws of heaven and earth. That's true. Although the owner of the All Heavens shop is strong enough, he's still living within the laws. How could he possibly be a match for an overgod? I hope the owner of the All Heavens shop can come to his senses in time. Judging from the overgod of fate's expression, he seems to be furious. The gods, including the sovereigns, all gasped as they watched the 5-clawed golden dragon crumble. In the eyes of those fellows below, you're invincible, the rulers of this world. But do you think so yourselves? Chu Bei was unmoved by the 5-clawed golden dragon's crumble, and he said expressionlessly, "The heavens are vast, but have you ever truly escaped? Even if Hong Ming came, I wouldn't fear him, let alone you 4 little fellows." Has the owner of the All Heavens shop gone mad? He actually dares to speak to an overgod like that. Who is this Hong Ming he's talking about? Could it be that he's an existence even stronger than an overgod? Where did this owner of the All Heavens shop come from? Just how many secrets does he have? When the sovereigns heard Chu Bei's words, they couldn't help but frown in confusion. But when the 4 overgods heard Hong Ming's name, their bodies suddenly trembled, and looks of respect appeared on their faces. Impudent! Is Lord Hong Ming someone you can mention? The overgod of fate was the first to react, and he flew into a rage. He transformed into 1,000,000,000,000 strands of golden light that shot toward Chu Bei. Although the other 3 overgods didn't attack, they didn't have any intention of stopping him either. The instant the overgod of fate attacked, the crumbling battlefield healed. To be precise, it was a new battlefield. There were no spatial turbulences here, only endless resplendent light and floating runes of the great Tao. It was as if this world had been created by the overgod of fate, a brand new world. Within the battlefield, 1,000,000,000,000 strands of golden light instantly enveloped the area where Chu Bei was. Rumble! An incomparably terrifying explosion reverberated throughout the battlefield. Countless runes of the great Tao intersected, emanating mysterious ripples of energy. These ripples of energy, if it were us, we probably would have been instantly reduced to dust. I wonder how the owner of the All Heavens shop is doing. Will he be able to hold on? The battle between overgods is no longer something we can predict. The sovereigns stared at the new battlefield, filled with golden light. All of them held their breaths in concentration. Linley, his lordship, Master will be fine. How many surprises has he given us on the way here? Before he attacked, who would have imagined that he would be able to defeat the chief sovereign of light and the chief sovereign of fate? This time, he'll definitely be fine. Linley interrupted Hogg before he could finish. Although he said this, judging from how tightly he was gripping his clothes, he was clearly extremely nervous and worried. After all, this time, Chu Bei's opponent was one of the edicts of heaven and earth, one of the legendary overgods. Don't worry. Your master doesn't care about these so-called overgods at all. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out in the minds of the 10,000,000 gods. Hearing this voice, Linley's nervous heart relaxed. Rumble! With a sharp, buzzing sound, the countless rays of golden light created by the overgod of fate vanished. And then, the newly created battlefield collapsed. From the beginning to the end, only a few seconds had passed. Crackle! Suddenly, an enormous hand swept out from within that collapsing world filled with golden light. Upon closer inspection, one could see a misty primordial chaos swirling within the palm of the enormous hand, emanating a strange, majestic aura. Bang! Yet another low, muffled sound. That enormous hand seemed to have struck something, emitting a low, muffled sound. The dazzling golden light dissipated. Right at this moment, the entire celestial realm fell silent. All of the spectating gods raised their heads, their mouths wide open. Looks of disbelief were in their eyes. This was especially true when they saw what that enormous hand was holding. All of their bodies went numb, and only deep shock remained in their eyes. They didn't dare to believe that what they had just seen was real. It wasn't just the gods and high gods. Even the chief sovereigns of the elemental gods, the chief sovereigns of the edicts, and the three overgods on the battlefield all had frozen looks on their faces. Even as powerful as they were, they seemed to have turned into wooden statues, staring blankly ahead of them. This, Reading Bell let out a long breath. His eyes were wide open, and his tongue was tied, as though he had lost his soul. By his side, the Bloodridge sovereign was the same. His face was frozen. "Father, I told you that Master would be fine," Linley murmured to himself as he stared at the collapsing world above him. Chapter 537. Far away, in the astral battlefield, Chu Bei stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his emotionless eyes looking straight ahead. Behind Chu Bei, the previously illusory iron lump had completely solidified. The iron lump had grown several times in size. He raised his right arm, and a giant hand extended from the front end of his right arm. The giant hand held a figure in its palm. It was the overgod of fate. At this moment, the overgod of fate seemed to be imprisoned by an unshakable force. He was motionless, and he was using all his strength to turn his head and look in the direction of the overgods of destruction, death, and life. His eyes filled with pleading. Clearly, the trapped overgod of fate was seeking the help of the other three overgods. The overgod of destruction, the overgod of death, and the overgod of life exchanged glances. They naturally understood what the overgod of fate meant, but none of them responded. The might that the owner of the all-heavens shop was currently exuding was simply too terrifying. It was as if he had suddenly become a completely different person. They had only ever felt this sort of might from a single person before, and that was their creator, Lord Primordial Chaos, who was also the master of this world. They did not understand why the owner of the all-heavens shop had suddenly become an existence on par with Lord Primordial Chaos. However, they were certain that the current owner of the all-heavens shop was definitely not someone they could provoke. Sensing the expressions of the other three overgods, the overgod of fate shook his head, a hint of helplessness appearing on his face. How could he not know that the owner of the all-heavens shop, whose aura had suddenly undergone a tremendous change, had risen to a level that far surpassed them, and could even stand shoulder to shoulder with Lord Primordial Chaos? Chu Bei looked expressionlessly at the overgod of fate. When the overgod of fate had attacked, he had once again used Xiao Hei's power. The overgod of fate. He's lost. How could this be? Impossible. That's an overgod. The laws of this world. A supreme existence that can kill us with a single thought. Has the owner of the all-heavens shop truly surpassed the overgods? This is truly inconceivable. First, it was the sovereign of light, then the sovereign of fate, and now an overgod. The owner of the all-heavens shop has truly overturned my understanding. Although the sovereigns couldn't see things as clearly as the overgods, they could still make out the situation on the battlefield. The overgod of fate had been imprisoned by the master of the all-heavens shop. Such an outcome shattered the understanding of all the gods present. There's always someone better than us. How much further do we have to go? The Death Sovereign looked at Chu Bei's figure in a trance, mumbling to herself as if she had lost her soul. The Chief Sovereign of Fate, Orloff, was completely stunned, his gaze unfocused. He had thought that the attack the other party had used on him was already the strongest killing move, But from the looks of it now, the other party's previous attack on him might really have been just a casual attack. What was laughable was that he didn't even take the other party seriously in the beginning. I've waited for countless years. Finally, it's here. All of a sudden, a dusky energy appeared in the distant sky, and a figure walked out. This person was dressed in simple linen robes, and his long hair was loose and unbound. He didn't seem to care about his appearance, but judging from his appearance, he was a middle-aged man with fairly distinct facial features. As soon as his voice rang out, the 4 higher planes, the 7 divine elemental planes, and the other material planes like the Yulon continent all began to tremble, and this person's figure appeared in the skies. Instantly, all of the Devata planes belonging to this major world began to erupt into an uproar, and the sounds of discussion filled every corner of every single plane. Everyone was trying to guess at the identity of this middle-aged man. A material plane. The Yulon continent. Quick, look at the sky. Who is that person? Not just him. There are so many others. What is that place? Who are those people? That young man looks so familiar. As the middle-aged man dressed in linen robes appeared in the celestial realm, an enormous projection appeared in the skies above the Yulon continent. In the projection, only the middle-aged man's appearance could be seen. Next, the spectating chief sovereigns and deities appeared as well. Everyone in the Yulon continent stopped what they were doing and raised their heads to stare at the sky. Their faces were filled with confusion and astonishment. The core region of the All-Heavens shop. Uncle Hillman, that's Big Brother. And Daddy isn't dead. Who is that person next to Daddy? He's alive. He's alive. Wharton, that's your mother. Really? This is great. My mother and father are both fine. Can it be that all of this has something to do with the boss? Hillman and Wharton turned their gazes away from the middle-aged man. When they saw Linley, Hogg, and Lena, they instantly revealed looks of excitement. The forest of darkness. Lord Beirut, what's with the look on your face? Can it be that you recognize those people? The 3 violet gold rats looked respectfully at Beirut, 4 chief sovereigns of the edicts and 6 chief sovereigns of the elemental gods, and those 3 people whom even they had to treat so respectfully. If my guess is correct, they should be over-gods. As for that middle-aged man in linen, Beirut took a deep breath, his eyes filled with deep astonishment. What? Over-gods? They are over-gods. Lord Beirut, what is that place? I even saw the owner of the All-Heavens shop. What's going on here? Why is it that even the legendary over-gods have appeared? The 3 violet gold rats called out in shock, but when they asked Beirut, the latter just shook his head. In front of the over-gods, he, a puny lesser sovereign, was no different from an ant. How could he possibly know about the matters of such an existence? It wasn't just the Yulon continent. The netherworld, the infernal realm, the life realm, the 7 divine elemental planes, and the many other material planes were all wildly discussing this scene in the sky. The celestial realm. The deities who were watching the middle-aged man in linen at close range all had wooden, dazed looks on their faces. We pay our respects to Lord Primordial Chaos. In the sky, the overgods of destruction, death, and life immediately kowtowed towards the middle-aged man in linen with incomparable reverence. Because the overgod of fate had been restrained by the enormous hand of the iron lump, he could only stare at the middle-aged man in linen. However, one could still see the respect in his eyes. Lord Primordial Chaos? That person, what sort of person is he? Even the overgods have to bow to him. The deities, including the chief sovereigns, stared dumbly at the middle-aged man in linen, as though they had lost their souls. The performance of the 3 overgods had completely overturned everything they knew. As they saw it, the overgods represented the edicts of the world, and were the most supreme of existences. Who would have imagined that there was someone even more powerful than the overgods? Lord Primordial Chaos, save me. The overgod of fate struggled in the hands of the giant hand, but no matter how he used his edicts, he was unable to break free. The middle-aged man glanced calmly at the overgod of fate. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, then shook his head, not saying anything. After a long moment of silence, the middle-aged man lowered his head, sweeping the deities below him with his gaze. "Little fellows, are you all very curious about my identity?" A voice filled with laughter drifted through the air, permeating all the plains and filling every nook and cranny. When the deities met the middle-aged man's gaze, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Instead, their eyes were filled with anticipation. "My name is Primordial Chaos. I am the creator of this dimension." The middle-aged man's voice rang out in all the planes of this major world. As his voice fell, he looked at Chu Bei. "Fellow Taoist, please." Chu Bei nodded slightly. Taking a step forward, he followed the middle-aged man out of the celestial realm. When they reappeared, they were already in a chaotic, misty space. "Fellow Taoist, that is my current residence." The middle-aged man stretched out his hand and pointed forward. In the center of the boundless chaotic energy, 5 star fields floated. At first glance, the 4 star fields on the periphery only had a single color. As for the star field in the center, it was a fusion of the 4 colors of the star fields on the periphery. In the primordial chaos era, I was the only living being in this dimension. It was also this place that gave birth to me. The middle-aged man looked at Chu Bei as though he had found a soulmate. It was as though he had endless things to say. In that era, I was by myself and very bored. At one point, I had a flash of inspiration and began to create a world. The largest one is the main world, and the other 4 are the subsidiary worlds. Fellow Taoist, the world you were in earlier was one of the subsidiary worlds. As for the 4 overgods, they were created by me to manage that world. The middle-aged man led Chu Bei through the misty chaos, his deep, steady voice echoing through the 5 worlds for a long time. Primordial chaos? So this world we're in was created by him. That's insane. How terrifying must he be to be able to do something like this? Say, since there are 4 other worlds similar to ours, do you think we can escape from this world and head to the other worlds? As long as you're strong enough, of course you can. Didn't you see Lord Primordial Chaos and the owner of the All-Heaven store roaming through the 5 major worlds? Truly unbelievable. Then where did the owner of the All-Heaven store come from? Could it be that he wasn't created by Lord Primordial Chaos? The gods of the celestial realm and many other planes looked up at the sky. There, they saw 2 figures walking side by side amidst the primordial chaos. Around them were 5 vast star fields, each of which flashed with all sorts of brilliance. The gods raised their heads, their eyes unblinking. At this moment, there were no words that could describe the shock in their hearts. The 4 overgods, including the overgod of fate, looked at each other with astonishment on their faces. Previously, they had thought that this was the only world. Little did they know that Lord Primordial Chaos had created 4 more worlds. Who might fellow Taoist be? The middle-aged man's voice rang out once more. At this moment, the gazes of everyone in the various planes focused on Chu Bei. Compared to this unfamiliar middle-aged man, they knew a little about the owner of the All-Heaven store and were naturally filled with curiosity. This curiosity even surpassed their curiosity towards the 4 overgods and primordial chaos. Chapter 538. Do you think that I belong to one of your 5 worlds? Chu Bei faced Hongming, his hands clasped behind his back. His calm voice echoed throughout the entire coiling dragon plain. Did you hear that? The owner of the All-Heaven shop doesn't belong to any of these 5 worlds. What do you mean? Could it be that he is the same as Lord Primordial Chaos? That he was formed from the primordial chaos? If that's the case, then everything makes sense. From start to finish, he was in existence on the same level as Lord Primordial Chaos. No wonder the overgod of fate wasn't a match for the owner of the All-Heaven shop. But who would have thought that someone on the same level as Lord Primordial Chaos would be so bored as to wander around his subsidiary world? The overgods, chief sovereigns, and other powerful existences all instantly turned pale when they heard those casual words. As I thought, Hongming chuckled, then said, "But there's something I don't understand. When I was formed, why didn't I sense your existence?" No, you misunderstood. What I meant was that I don't belong to this vast primordial chaos dimension. Chu Bei glanced sideways at Hong Ming and said calmly. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Hong Ming was stunned for a moment, and then his face changed to one of surprise. A long time later, you're saying that you came from a world outside the primordial chaos barrier? Hong Ming let out a long breath, his gaze fixed on Chu Bei, his expression incomparably serious. What do you think? Chu Bei had a hint of a smile on his face. Is it really outside the primordial chaos barrier? Hong Ming murmured to himself, and then a smile appeared on his face. I have a request. Fellow Taoist, would you be willing to lend me a hand? Let me go take a look at the world outside the primordial chaos barrier. Before that, I have some matters to take care of. As his calm voice fell, Chu Bei took a step forward and appeared in the heaven realm once again. Seeing Chu Bei reappear on the battlefield, the chief sovereign of fate and the over-god of fate, who had been imprisoned in midair and unable to move, narrowed their eyes, fear appearing in their eyes. Chu Bei glanced at the two of them and activated his divine will. A moment later, the chief sovereign of fate's body began to fade. He didn't seem to be in any pain at all. He didn't even let out a scream. Just like that, he disappeared into nothingness. Lord Hong Ming, save me. The face of the over-god of fate completely changed. He immediately sent a cry for help towards primordial chaos. Fellow Taoist, even for me, it would take some effort to establish a new set of laws. I think this little guy is really scared. Let him go. Hong Ming appeared beside Chu Bei and said with a smile. Chu Bei shook his head. His gaze hardened, and that enormous hand which was gripping the over-god of fate suddenly tightened. With a loud bang, the entire heaven realm was in an uproar. However, just as the heavenly realm was about to disintegrate along with the over-god of fate's death, that resplendent hand split into billions of strands of divine light, firmly locking the heavenly realm in place. Everything soon returned to normal. Staring in the direction where the over-god of fate had disappeared, primordial chaos let out a gloomy sigh. Since you find it troublesome, let me establish a new set of laws for your world. As his emotionless voice fell, a round pearl flew out from between Chu Bei's eyebrows. The heaven pearl. He had obtained it when he killed the wielder of the will of the heavens in the divine necropolis plane. After that, it had been nourished by the system in his sea of consciousness. The entire heaven realm, or more accurately, the netherworld, the life realm, the infernal realm, the 7 elemental planes, and all the other planes in this world. All of them rose into the sky with a dazzling azure light. Soon, a large vertical eye appeared in the skies of the various major planes. The vertical eye slowly opened, and a vast, surging power swept out, filling all the planes in this world. To be more precise, no matter which plane they were in, the vertical eye they saw was the same vertical eye. This was because this vertical eye was everywhere. What is this eye? Why do I feel like I suddenly have an indescribable connection with it? I have the same feeling too. It's as if I'm being controlled by someone. But when I sense it carefully, I don't feel any discomfort. It's the divine weapon of the all-heavens shop's owner. The gods of many planes raised their heads to look at the vertical eye that had suddenly appeared in the sky. All of them furrowed their brows, their heartstrings tense. Master! Suddenly, a slightly mechanical voice reverberated in the skies of all the planes, shaking everyone's hearts. The vertical eye in the heaven realm turned to look at Chu Bei. There was a blurry light in the eye, and it was actually bowing to Chu Bei. Chu Bei nodded at the vertical eye, then swept his gaze across all the gods. I destroyed one of your laws, so I'll return a heavenly Tao to you all. Could that vertical eye be the heavenly Tao that the all-heaven shop's owner spoke of? But then again, what's the heavenly Tao for? Why do you care so much? It's as if you've interacted with the over-god of fate when he was alive. That's true. In any case, it has nothing to do with ants like us. Although ordinary gods couldn't sense the meaning of the heavenly Tao, the sovereigns of the laws, the sovereigns of the 7 elements, and even the 3 overgods could sense the terror of the heavenly Tao. It was as if there was a thread of life and death tied to that vertical eye. With a single thought, it could decide their fates. The three overgods exchanged glances, then looked at the vertical eye above their heads. Their faces were filled with helplessness. Before this, the three of them had been equals with the overgod of fate. When Hongming wasn't present, they were the heavens of this plane, the rulers of this plane. But now, the heavenly Tao above their heads directly controlled their fates. Fellow Taoist, you're quite capable. Hongming glanced at the heavenly Tao, then looked at the heavenly jewel that had flown back to Chu Bei's forehead. He couldn't help but sigh. Fine. Since you like it, I'll gift this plane to you. What? Lord Hongming isn't joking, is he? In that case, the owner of this plane will be the owner of the All Heavens shop in the future. Heavens? Doesn't that mean the All Heavens shop will be the undisputed #1 faction in the future? Hearing Hongming's words, the gods all took a deep breath. As for the people of the Yulan continent, they suddenly had a thought. In the future, they had to send their descendants into the All Heavens shop. Your decision is very much to my liking. Chu Bei smiled towards Hongming while gesturing for him to follow. If there is anything you need, I will definitely do my best to help. Thank you. Hongming laughed loudly. Fellow Taoist, please follow me. As his voice rang out, Hongming took the first step forward. With that first step, the 5 worlds disappeared. And then, a second step, a third step. This was an enormous region of primordial chaos. Although it didn't have any star fields, it did have various levels of primordial chaos storms. Although these primordial chaos storms were incomparably terrifying, they weren't able to harm Hongming at all. During this entire process, Chu Bei remained half a meter behind Hongming. The distance between them didn't increase, nor did it decrease. Hongming was still rather stunned by Chu Bei's speed. No matter how fast he sped up, to the point where he reached his maximum speed, the person behind him still maintained a constant distance from him. After traveling for an unknown distance, Hongming finally came to a stop. Chu Bei, who had been following him the entire time, also stopped. In the end, he stood side by side with Hongming and looked up diagonally. Look, what is that place? I really want to jump out of this world and go to the primordial chaos space where Lord Hongming and the owner of the All Heavens shop are. But just what does Lord Hongming need the owner of the All Heavens shop to help him with? Is there something in this world that even he can't solve? Look carefully at that river in front of Lord Hongming. It's going against the flow. The 3 paramount gods, the 3 sovereigns of the laws, and the gods of all the other planes stared blankly at the image in the sky. Their mouths were wide open, and their faces were filled with disbelief. In the image, Hongming and Chu Bei had arrived at some unknown place. Above them was a slanted staircase to heaven. At the bottom of the staircase was a long river radiating light and accompanied by lightning. It flowed along the staircase to heaven. It was extremely wide and silvery white, with a hint of golden light. The river was very gentle, and one couldn't see the end of it. But there were some corpses floating in the river. Looking carefully, these corpses actually retained their appearance when they were alive. They didn't decay at all. Clearly, these people were once terrifying experts. On both sides of the staircase to heaven were resplendent golden light. Dense runes of the great Tao floated in the golden light, releasing a mysterious aura. It was like an isolated passage that wrapped around the staircase to heaven. Looking carefully, at the end of the staircase to heaven, there was a huge round door. This door wasn't made of the so-called metal material. Instead, it was a rippling door made of many colors. Vaguely, the sound of the great Tao lingered around it. What do you need this seat to do? Chu Bei looked calmly at Hongming. After using Xiao Hei's power for the second time, his cultivation base was at the peak of the 8th stage quasi-immortal emperor realm, and Hongming's aura fluctuation was also at the 8th stage quasi-immortal emperor realm. He wasn't far from the 9th stage. With such strength, even in the realm C, where the experts of the all heavens gathered, he was a peak existence. In fact, Chu Bei didn't have much confidence that Hongming couldn't complete the task. After all, the two of them were roughly equal in strength. Follow me up the staircase to heaven and help me open that door. Hongming stretched out his hand and pointed at the round door formed by intertwining ripples at the end of the staircase to heaven. Mission 7 activated. Host obtains source power. Just as Chu Bei nodded in response to Hong Ming, the system's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Source power? Chu Bei muttered, then frowned and looked at the staircase to heaven. In front of him, besides the staircase to heaven and the door, there was only hazy chaos. Traveling from the 5 worlds created by Hong Ming all the way to where they were now took some time. If this source power was related to the hazy chaos, the mission would have been activated long ago and not wait until now. Chapter 539. In other words, the origin energy mentioned by the system had to be related to the celestial stairway and that door. Chu Bei came back to his senses and strode after Hong Ming. Under countless gazes, when Chu Bei and Hong Ming stepped onto the staircase, the entire chaotic space suddenly trembled, and a strange, buzzing sound suddenly resounded. This sound seemed to come from the 9th level of hell, and it made one's scalp go numb. If an ordinary god were here, they would probably be reduced to dust in less than half a second. Even a god as strong as him wouldn't be able to survive this sound wave. However, when this incomparably terrifying sound wave approached Hong Ming and Chu Bei, it directly collapsed with a chi sound. It was also at this moment that the door at the end of the long stairway began to tremble, emitting a soul-shaking rumble. Rumble. When Chu Bei and Hong Ming completely stood on the first step, the originally slowly flowing Milky Way below them suddenly became violent. In an instant, it turned into a surging river. The crashing of the waves was terrifying to the soul, and from time to time, the waves brought about by the waves were like a huge mouth that wanted to devour people. The resplendent light on both sides also transformed, transforming into a vast and boundless territory. This was a blood-red world, and the pungent smell of blood lingered in the air. It was somewhat nauseating. The boundless land was completely dyed red with blood. Immediately afterward, a black mass of chaotic shadows surged from the end of the territory. As if they had gone mad, or as if they had received some kind of order, they madly charged at Chu Bei and Hong Ming. What's going on? Why did the void suddenly turn into a hellish battlefield? What are those things that are wrapped in the hazy primal chaos? Could it be that Lord Hong Ming also has enemies? What are Lord Hong Ming and the owner of the All-Heaven shop trying to do? Speaking of which, what's behind that door? The powerful god stared blankly at the scene in the sky. When the golden light on both sides of the stairway transformed into a brand new world, they all held their breaths, their eyes filled with deep astonishment. There's always someone better than you out there. Could it be referring to what's behind that door? The Master of Death recalled what Chu Bei had said to her. She stared at the door at the end of the stairway in a daze, as if she had lost her soul. In the chaotic void, Hong Ming seemed to have experienced such a scene countless times. His expression did not change at all. As for Chu Bei, he frowned. Of course, he was not afraid of these black shadows that were wrapped in chaos. It was just that this stairway was not as it seemed on the surface. These are the lowest grade of chaos beasts. Hong Ming glanced at the chaos beasts charging at them from all directions. After saying a few words to Chu Bei, he waved his sleeves. In an instant, tens of thousands of chaos beasts cried out in pain. The sky was filled with blood-red light. The blood-red beasts' blood turned the ground even darker. If these chaos beasts were to be placed in the Yulon continent, even the weakest of them would definitely be at the dominating level. But in the eyes of Chu Bei and Hong Ming, they were nothing at all. They were no different from ants. As the chaos beasts collapsed, this world shattered as well, once more transforming into a golden light that protected the stairway to heaven. A short while later, the Milky Way below the stairway to heaven once more grew quiet and flowed slowly. Rumble. But just as Hong Ming and Chu Bei stepped onto the second stairway, a similar scene occurred once more. Only, this time, the world was filled with clouds and mist. Birds sang and flowers bloomed. It was like a paradise on earth. Interesting. Seeing the world change yet again, Chu Bei's lips couldn't help but curl upwards in a smile. It seems that with each step, we have to experience a different world. Right. This process is indeed a bit complicated. Hong Ming chuckled, then shrugged. The stairway to heaven has a total of 100 steps. Fellow Taoist, you can just watch the first 98 steps. I'll only need your help on the last 2 steps. Rumble. Just as the group of gods were exclaiming about how the world Hong Ming and Chu Bei were in was like a paradise, the void suddenly rumbled. In the next moment, a violent gust of wind blew. The dense clouds were blown away, and the ground trembled. Countless giants wrapped in a hazy aura charged over like a tsunami. It was as if the world was about to collapse. This world was shaking as if it was about to collapse at any moment. These are the Chaos Giants. Hong Ming's robes fluttered in the wind as he calmly spoke to Chu Bei. Then, a terrifying aura spread out. The terrifying, murderous aura was like the turbulent waves of the ocean. In an instant, tens of thousands of Chaos Giants were swallowed up. In the end, in a blinding blood-red light, these giants were crushed into meat paste. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. The world formed by the second stairway disappeared. Hong Ming and Chu Bei stepped onto the third stairway. With a rumble, a new world appeared. Black fog covered everything. One couldn't even see their own fingers. The void was filled with the sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling. In the darkness, one could vaguely make out pairs of scarlet eyes. This was a strange and unknown existence. Through the chaos, one could vaguely see that they were humanoid in shape and had 6 pairs of wings on their backs. However, when these creatures swarmed toward Hong Ming and Chu Bei, Hong Ming's eyes narrowed. His terrifying gaze was as vast as the heavenly sea, as vast as the universe. Then, the pairs of scarlet eyes in the darkness dimmed. Their translucent bodies exploded one after another, and the third world vanished. Similar scenes repeated over and over again. Hong Ming and Chu Bei stepped onto the stairway to heaven, destroying one world after another. Of course, Hong Ming was the one doing all this. Chu Bei was just a spectator from start to finish. However, even though they'd already stepped onto the 50th stair, Hong Ming could determine the life and death of these creatures with a single thought. His Excellency Hong Ming is truly powerful. If it were us, we probably wouldn't even be able to step onto the first stair. Although the owner of the All Heaven shop didn't make a move, from his casual expression, it's obvious that he didn't care about these creatures. Speaking of which, is this stairway formed naturally in the chaos like His Excellency Hong Ming? Or is it created by someone? If it's the latter, then it's really too terrifying. A world on each stair. Then how terrifying is the Creator's strength? Perhaps he's even stronger than His Excellency Hong Ming. Many experts from the 5 worlds looked at the scene in the sky and cried out in alarm. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. As time went by, Hong Ming and Chu Bei stepped onto the stairway. 88th stair, 89th stair, 90th stair. The higher they went, the stronger the creatures in the worlds formed by the stairway. Even someone as strong as Hong Ming started to become serious. At the 92nd stair, there was already a quasi-immortal emperor in that world. However, because of this realm, every 3 stair was a heavenly tribulation. This first stage quasi-immortal emperor only lasted a few rounds before escaping from Hong Ming. On the 93rd stair, a second stage quasi-immortal emperor appeared. On the 94th stair, a third stage quasi-immortal emperor appeared. On the 95th stair, a fourth stage quasi-immortal emperor appeared. Finally, when Hong Ming led Chu Bei to the 99th stair, he stopped and looked ahead. His expression was calm as if he was waiting for something. Hong Ming, give up. Our strength is equal. You can't win against me. A calm and indifferent voice sounded. The 99th stair bloomed with divine light, and a new world was formed. As far as the eye could see, this was a boundless starry sky. There were star regions floating and rivers of stars hanging upside down. However, whether it was the star regions or the rivers of stars, there was no life. It was like a dead object. A faint and low voice sounded, reverberating in the void. It was terrifying. A figure appeared above the river of stars. This was a man in a purple robe. His gaze fell on Hong Ming and a smile appeared on his face. Every move he made could cause the river of stars below and the surrounding star regions to tremble. The most eye-catching thing was the white stone floating behind him. This stone seemed to be one with the purple-robed man and was constantly providing him with a mysterious energy. Zifeng, this time is different from the past. let me give you a word of advice. It's better for you to obediently give way. Hong Meng and the purple-robed man were like old acquaintances who had crossed paths thousands of times. Different from the past? The purple-robed man's gaze swept past Hong Meng and paused on Chu Bei. He frowned. In the past, you came alone. This time, you actually brought someone with you. Could it be that he is a person who transcended from the 5 worlds you created? Do you think that in the 5 worlds I created, in such a short period of time, there would be someone who could reach the level where they could fight alongside me? Hong Meng smiled as he looked at the purple-robed man. Then who is he? Could it be that he was also born in this primal chaos? When he heard Hong Meng's words, the purple-robed man's frown deepened. Don't care so much. I'm just asking you if you will give way or not. If you don't, I will smash your head today. Hong Meng twisted his neck. His appearance was actually somewhat of a hooligan. At his level, there was no one in this primal chaos who could keep pace with him. Before Chu Bei had appeared, the only one who could truly communicate with him was Zifeng, who was on par with him but had blocked his path. For hundreds of millions of years, every time he came here, he would ask about the purple-robed man's background, the 100 steps behind him, and the rippling door. However, the purple-robed man would always chuckle in response to his questions. It was truly detestable. Hong Meng, you know that this is my mission. The purple-robed man smiled at Hong Meng, then glanced at Chu Bei. He smiled. Besides, we haven't even fought yet. How do you know that I can't stop you? You will regret this. Hong Meng huffed coldly. Then, he looked at Chu Bei. Fellow, I hope that you can lend me a hand and smash this old fellow into pieces. I'll naturally accomplish what I've promised you. Chu Bei nodded, and then his gaze locked onto the purple-robed man. To be more precise, it was the ghastly white rock behind the purple-robed man. Actually, even if Hong Meng hadn't spoken, he would have made a move against the purple-robed man. All of this was because of the ghastly white rock. It was the source of the origin energy required by the system's mission. However, based on the purple-robed man's aura, the purple-robed man's strength wasn't inferior to him and Hong Meng. He was at the 8th level of the quasi-immortal emperor realm. Because of this, from another perspective, helping Hong Meng was also helping himself. After all, the ghastly white rock was a mission from the system, and it was related to the activation of the next level of his authority. Of course, just like Hong Meng, he was extremely curious about the purple-robed man's background. Why would an 8th-level quasi-immortal emperor be guarding this place? Where exactly did that rippling door lead to? Chapter 540. Did you see that? Lord Hong Meng has reached the 99th step. Who's that purple-robed man? He seems to be very familiar with Lord Hong Meng, but it seems like they're enemies. Who is this person to be Lord Hong Meng's opponent? Perhaps only those who have reached their level can truly understand this great world. The top powerhouses of the 5 worlds created by Hong Meng looked at the scene in the sky and sighed. Look, Lord Hong Meng and the others are fighting. At this moment, someone cried out in surprise. In the vast sea of stars formed by the 99th step, 3 figures were intertwined. To be more precise, 2 of the figures were besieging another figure. Their battlefield constantly shifted in the sea of stars. Wherever they passed, just the aftershocks alone would shatter one star region after another. Rumble. The vast starry sky trembled as the 3 of them fought. Dazzling runes swirled around their bodies. The dense patterns indicated that their Dao techniques were extremely mysterious, but they were all different from each other. They were all powerhouses who stood at the peak of cultivation. They had their own Dao. Hong Meng's attacks were simple and direct. However, every time he swung his fist, it would be accompanied by chaotic qi. It was extremely terrifying. Chu Bei formed a fist seal. Sometimes it separated from the iron lump, and sometimes it merged into one. Every time his fist landed, various strange images would appear in the fist seal. As for the purple-robed man, the ghastly white stone behind him shone with a dazzling light. Every time he waved his hands, he would absorb a large amount of ghastly white light to attack. Hong Meng, you've really found a good helper. It had to be said that the purple-robed man was very strong. Every move he made contained a might that looked down on the world. He wandered in the dazzling rain of light. Every step he took would shatter the galaxy below and cause the endless sky to tremble. Unfortunately, his opponent was also very strong. Whether it was Hongming or Chu Bei, they weren't weaker than him at all. Under their joint attacks, he used all sorts of supreme treasure techniques. Even so, he still couldn't break free from the situation of being suppressed. From the very beginning, he had fallen into a passive position. These two people's attacks were really too fierce. The two of them attacked fiercely without holding back at all. As such, he didn't dare to hold back and directly used his strongest origin energy to resist. In the vast starry sky, the three of them destroyed one starfield after another. The battle gradually reached its climax. The purple-robed man continuously retreated while Hongming and Chu Bei followed closely behind. Whoosh, unknowingly, the three of them had arrived above an azure river. All sorts of strange runes floated in the river water, containing the endless power of time. This was the River of Time. The three of them traveled down the River of Time and even broke the space-time barriers on both sides of the River of Time. On the banks of the long river, one figure after another appeared. All of them were extremely powerful cultivators. Among them, the strongest group of people, although their strength couldn't compare to Hongming, Zifeng, and Chu Bei, they had also stepped into the half-immortal Emperor realm. Their auras are at the quasi-immortal Emperor level. I'm afraid he has already reached the 6th level. Oh my god, which era are they from? 3 quasi-immortal emperors above the 6th level actually appeared at the same time. As expected, we are in a declining era. As the number 1 person of this era, I am still in the Immortal King realm. On the banks of the River of Time, the cultivators from different eras looked at the 3 figures fighting fiercely above the river. When they sensed the auras emitted from their bodies, their expressions changed greatly. They were filled with fear, but even more so, respect. Clang. Suddenly, a drawn-out bell sound came from an area on the banks of the long river. Immediately after, a man with a large bell floating above his head appeared. He seemed to have an impenetrable aura, allowing the chaotic space-time energy behind him to attack him. The large bell was majestic and emitted chaotic energy. Every time it shook, there would be ripples of time spreading. It dropped millions of strands of immortal light that wrapped around the man's figure. Boom! Before the bell sound dissipated, the sound of rolling thunder sounded. In the long river, lightning flashed in the 9 heavens. A large cauldron appeared and dropped down origin energy. On top of the cauldron, there was a man. He was handsome and tall. His eyebrows were vertical, and his eyes were sharp like cold lightning. He floated down and came to the side of the man with the bell, standing side by side with him. Splash! The long river shook, and the waves hit the sky. A woman walked out from it. Her black clothes were whiter than snow, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. Her appearance was peerless, and she walked on the waves. In an instant, she appeared beside the man with the cauldron. No beginning, Yifan, vicious. Why are these 3 people here too? Looking around, there are many people who have a death feud with the 3 of them. Don't tell me they are going to fight? When the man with the bell, the man with the cauldron, and the woman in black appeared, they became the focus of the cultivators on the banks of the long river. After being surprised, they started to discuss. As for No Beginning, Yifan, Vicious, and their opponents, they did not have the time to care about the discussions around them. Their gazes pierced through the hazy chaos and shot towards the battlefield where Hongming, Zifeng, and Chu Bei were fighting. We meet your senior Chu again. No Beginning looked dazedly at the battlefield where Hongming and the others were fighting, and he couldn't help but sigh. Where is Senior Chu in this time and space? Is his cultivation level suppressed to the consummate level of the half-celestial emperor tier there? Vicious eyes landed on Chu Bei, and there was some astonishment on his beautiful face. Master, Yifan murmured softly, joy on his face. At the same time, Zifeng, are you still going to continue holding on? What's the point? If I really crush you, how are we going to interact in the future? In the vast galaxy, Hongming's smug laughter reverberated around the battlefield above the long river of time. What's so great about finding helpers? If you have the ability, let's fight one-on-one. Hearing Hong Ming's provocation, Zifeng was flustered and exasperated. However, the truth was right in front of him. This battle was indeed very difficult for him to fight. Facing two elites of the same cultivation level, anyone would feel uncomfortable. On the battlefield, Zifeng stepped on the long river of time, counterattacking and retreating at the same time. At the same time, more and more elites appeared on the banks of the long river of time, and the weakest among them was an eighth heaven celestial king. Walala, as Hong Ming, Zifeng, and Chu Bei battled, the long river of time surged, and patches of dazzling symbols of great Tao shattered, carrying with them the aura of time. The elites on the banks of the long river, who had been attracted by the commotion, all moved out of the way. Among them, there were also some supreme elites who had stepped into the half-celestial emperor tier who descended along the long river, trying to observe the battle between the three eighth heaven tier half-celestial emperors at a close distance. What is that river? It seems to contain the power of time. Why have so many elites appeared on the banks of the river again? Those guys don't belong to this time and space. They have been alerted by Lord Hong Ming's battle. In the space-time of the coiling dragon plane, the elites of the five worlds all looked up at the sky. Because the projection in the sky was moving along with Hong Ming and Chu Bei, not only did they witness the whole battle, but they also saw the long river of time, as well as the elites from other space-time that had appeared on both sides of the river. At that moment, even the powerful Death Dominus and Life Dominus felt inexplicably insignificant when looking at the countless elites from other space-time on both sides of the river. Although the expressions of the overgods of destruction, life, and death were not so exaggerated, they were still filled with deep astonishment. Rumble. After an unknown period of time, finally, accompanied by a low buzzing sound, Zifeng was sent flying out of the battlefield. The white stone behind him became more and more resplendent, surrounded by mysterious runes, as if to stabilize his body. However, although the energy contained in this stone was strong, it ultimately could not withstand the two mighty forces of Hong Ming and Chu Bei pouring out at the same time. In the end, Zifeng was blasted into the long river of time. The surging river tornadoes soared into the sky and bombarded the space-time barriers along the banks. Those elites from other space-time who had not yet reacted were immediately sent flying by the tornadoes, their limbs shattered. Fortunately, these elites from other space-time were strong enough, and their limbs were regenerated in an instant. But even so, those elites from other space-time who were affected by the shockwaves showed fear, and they all distanced themselves from the battlefield where Hong Ming, Chu Bei, and Zifeng were fighting. Their battle was really too terrifying. Even someone as strong as a peak-stage immortal king or a third-stage quasi-emperor would find it difficult to remain unscathed under the aftermath of this battle. On the battlefield, the long river of time surged, and Zifeng rushed out of the river. However, just as he emerged, Hong Ming and Chu Bei joined hands and bombarded him. Rumble. An incomparably terrifying battle played out once again. Time passed by minute. Finally, with a bang, Zifeng's body exploded. It was also because he was strong enough that the blood in his body had not even started to splatter before it gathered together again. At their level, it was already very difficult for people of the same level to kill each other. Zifeng, don't be stubborn. There are so many people watching. Although I can't kill you, it's not good for you to be beaten so miserably, right? Hong Ming's mouth revealed a smile, and his words were full of sarcasm. Zifeng glanced coldly at Hong Ming and snorted coldly. What a stubborn old fellow. After failing to persuade him again, Hong Ming's expression became gloomy, and he seemed to be a little angry. Then, he turned his head to look at Chu Bei. Fellow Taoist, please be more ruthless. As soon as he finished speaking, Hong Ming's aura was the first to rise. The terrifying aura directly formed a light film around the battlefield. Even an ordinary quasi-emperor would retreat when looking at it. Sensing Hong Ming's aura that had risen to the extreme, Chu Bei nodded. His expression did not change, and there were no fluctuations in his emotions. But at this moment, a golden disc appeared above his head. The disc faced down, spewing out endless blue-green light, and finally dotted the space between his brows. Looking carefully, one could see that within the golden disk, there were billions of living beings from different planes worshipping it, and it was filled with the power of faith. Whoosh! The Bodhi ancient tree and the path understanding tree appeared behind Chu Bei. The moment the two ancient trees appeared, the long river of time below actually resonated, and the great Tao runes in the river fluttered like butterflies. Chapter 541. Fellow, let's attack together. On the battlefield, Hong Ming looked at Chu Bei. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body transformed into a ray of light that enveloped a myriad of galaxies, compressed them to the limit, and blasted towards Zifeng. At the same time, Chu Bei's figure moved as well. He raised his hand and smashed down in a simple and direct manner. Unlike Hong Ming, Chu Bei's goal was very clear. He wanted to seize the white stone behind Zifeng. What a pair of madmen! The corners of Zifeng's mouth twitched as he cursed angrily. The reason he was guarding the 99th step was none other than because he'd accepted a bribe and was entrusted with it. In another 10,000 years, the time he agreed upon would arrive, and it would be time for him to leave. A billion years ago, he was shocked when he fought Hong Ming for the first time. No matter what, he never imagined that there would actually be an existence that was on par with him in this chaotic space. Fortunately, Hong Ming's strength was on par with his. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing for him to be defeated right after he'd been entrusted with guarding the 99th step. But who would have expected that after he'd blocked Hong Ming time and time again throughout these countless years, and just as he was about to succeed and retreat, Hong Ming actually found a helper from somewhere, and this helper's strength was faintly above his own. Zifeng sighed faintly. When Hong Ming and Chu Bei became completely serious, he knew that there was no way out for him. Without hesitation, he executed his strongest ability as well. Endless runes condensed into ribbons that shot towards Hong Ming and Chu Bei. However, what caused Zifeng's soul to tremble was that the attack he'd condensed with his own essence hadn't even touched Chu Bei and Hong Ming before it was swallowed by the iron lump. Before Zifeng could react from his shock, Hong Ming and Chu Bei's attacks had already arrived before him. Go easy on me. When he met Hong Ming and Chu Bei's mocking gazes, a chill arose in Zifeng's heart. But before he could finish speaking, a series of violent attacks blasted his face. Bang, bang, bang. Chu Bei and Hong Ming's strongest attacks landed on Zifeng's body. In an instant, Zifeng's entire body was wrapped in brilliant light, and within the light, one could vaguely see billions of star fields that had been compressed to the limit. I told you to be gentle. You two lunatics. Amidst the light, one could vaguely see Zifeng's body shattering and exploding time and time again, reassembling and healing time and time again. That shrill scream drifted out, filled with anger and unwillingness. How terrifying! On the banks of the river of time, the powerhouses from a different space-time watched the scene in the ball of light in a daze and couldn't help but sigh. Damn it! Don't touch my source heaven stone. It took me 1,000,000 years to find this one. Suddenly, Zifeng's flustered and exasperated voice came from within the light, and one could hear the pain in his voice. Host has obtained origin energy. Mission completed. Just as Chu Bei grabbed the white stone behind Zifeng, the system's voice rang out in his mind. In an instant, the white stone directly appeared in his knowledge sea, releasing a white light that instantly filled his entire knowledge sea. The system interface changed, and a new page appeared. This page presented a cone-shaped tool, and next to the tool was a line of eye-catching words. Origin energy of heaven. Behind the words was a lonely number 1, and it just so happened that the tool contained only one droplet. Although this droplet was pitifully small, there seemed to be a layer of film around it that was condensed and unmelted. It was releasing a dazzling light, as if it had an unusual connection with the white stone. The system didn't explain too much, so Chu Bei naturally didn't care too much about it. Hong Ming, stop it right now. I'll let you go, okay? It was also at this moment that Zifeng's compassionate voice came from within the bright light. Bang! Accompanied by an explosion, Hong Ming withdrew his hand and smiled at Zifeng, who had exploded and healed again. Old friend, Wouldn't it have been better if you had been so sensible earlier? Zifeng glared at Hong Meng and snorted coldly before looking at Chu Bei. Return the origin heaven stone to me. That stone has already been refined by me, Chu Bei said calmly with his hands behind his back. Impossible. That's the origin heaven stone. Even you and I can't directly refine the energy within it. At most, we can only borrow it. Zifeng didn't believe Chu Bei's words at all, but just as he sent a wisp of divine sense to scan Chu Bei, his expression suddenly changed. How is this possible? It's really gone. Old friend, isn't it just a broken stone? If it's gone, then it's gone. Besides, didn't you refine it? What's there to feel bad about? At most, you can just find another one. Hong Meng patted Zifeng's shoulder in a good mood. What do you know? When you jump out of this world, you'll know what that stone represents. Zifeng cursed at Hong Meng. Zifeng glared fiercely at Chu Bei. So what if you've passed my test? If you want to push open that door, you have to cross the last step. That guy is stronger than me by more than 1 or 2 points. Even if the two of you attack together, you won't be a match for him. Hearing this, Hong Meng frowned, and the smile on his face became serious again. On the other hand, Chu Bei seemed incomparably calm, as if he didn't care about Zifeng's words at all. Rumble. With a loud bang, the 8th stage quasi-immortal Emperor Zifeng also disappeared in this vast starry sky. Is this group of little guys so curious? They still refuse to leave. Hong Meng glanced at the experts from the other spacetime on both sides of the long river of time and murmured, not paying much attention to them. Only the last step left. Looking at the last step in front of him and the rippling door that was only a meter away from him, Hong Meng took a deep breath and inexplicably felt a little nervous. For hundreds of millions of years, every time he came here, he was stopped by Zifeng. Today, he finally passed the 99th step. Fellow cultivator, please. Hong Meng gestured to Chu Bei. Meeting Hong Meng's gaze, Chu Bei nodded in response. Rumble. When Hong Meng and Chu Bei stepped on the last step, the entire stairway trembled violently and shook violently. Then, the heavenly river flowing below began to riot. At the bottom of the river, violent beasts began to rush out, carrying an incomparably terrifying aura and making strange hissing sounds. Not only the heavenly river, but the golden light on both sides also began to converge toward the middle, and countless golden creatures walked out faintly. Looking at this scene, Hong Meng was stunned. He never expected that there would be living creatures in the heavenly river and the golden light on both sides. Rumble. The roaring heavenly river and the bright golden light began to overlap and intertwine. Finally, a brand new world took shape. There were no continents, no stars, no galaxies, and no starfields. There was only a vast expanse of whiteness. Looking over, one could see chaos beasts roaming in this white world from time to time. These beasts' auras were abnormally strong, far from what the chaos beasts on the previous steps could compare to. Even the weakest among them had the strength of a peak true immortal. I didn't expect someone to reach this step. Suddenly, a golden path floated up and down, and a figure walked out from the end. Looking in the direction of the voice, it was a plainly dressed old man with white hair and beard. He strolled along the golden path, and as his calm voice fell, he'd already reached the end of the path. There are quite a lot of people here. With a smile, the white-haired old man swept his gaze over the experts from the other spacetime along the river of time, then finally landed on Hong Meng and Chu Bei. My power is being suppressed. How is this possible? Who is he? The instant they met the white-haired old man's gaze, the experts from the other spacetime along the river of time suddenly trembled. An indescribable, formless power seemed to shoot out from the white-haired old man's eyes, instantly piercing through the space-time barrier they were in, and then seeping into their bodies. Under this power, the boundless power in their bodies was suppressed, and they couldn't use it at all. It was as if they'd become ordinary people in an instant. Some of the early-stage quasi-immortal emperors on both sides of the river of time all had expressions of disbelief. They didn't dare to believe that at their level, there was actually someone who could suppress them with just a gaze. Could it be that, He's already stepped into the true immortal emperor realm? A quasi-immortal emperor exclaimed. Even if he hasn't, I'm afraid he's not far from it. Another quasi-immortal emperor took a deep breath. Hong Ming, I've already told you, even if you can get past me, you won't be able to open that door. At this moment, another figure appeared on the golden path. It was Zifeng who'd been guarding the 99th step earlier. What? You still want to fight? Seeing Zifeng's arrival, Hong Ming frowned. No, of course not. I've already been defeated. So how could I have the nerve to continue blocking you? Zifeng hurriedly spoke, and then retreated to the side, and said with a smile, I'm just watching a show this time. With Elder Bai's strength, it's more than enough to deal with the two of you. At least you still have some conscience. Hong Ming glanced at Zifeng, and then sized up the smiling, white-haired old man, and then turned to look at Chu Bei, who was beside him, and said, Fellow Taoist, the trouble seems to be a bit big. Chu Bei didn't reply, and only smiled. Since the day you were born, I've already noticed you. It's also because of your existence that I've personally guarded this large region. The white-haired old man stroked his beard, and his gaze fell on Hong Ming. Now it seems that this decision was correct. This large region? Could it be that there are many similar spaces? Hong Ming frowned and stared at the white-haired old man. Also, who exactly are you? Why are you guarding this place? What's behind that door? I am the guardian of this large region. You can call me Elder Bai. As for guarding this place, it's because the outside world is already chaotic enough, and I don't want you to add to the chaos. The white-haired old man faintly sighed. The outside world? You mean behind that door, right? Hong Ming asked tentatively. With me guarding this place, you can't get out. Give up on that thought. The white-haired old man didn't directly answer Hong Ming's question. As he spoke, he raised his right hand. The next moment, the dazzling golden light of this new world surged, and the powerful chaos ancient beasts hidden in the void howled in fear and immediately fled. Buzz, buzz. A giant hand took shape, sweeping through the void, and its target was Hong Ming. Layers of golden ripples surged like waves, spreading into the distance. At this moment, the experts from the alternate space-time along the long river of time suddenly felt a bone-piercing chill, and an instinctive fear that they hadn't felt for a long time arose spontaneously. Chapter 542. Looking at the white-haired old man's giant hand that slapped towards Hong Ming, the experts from the other space-time along the river of time felt their hearts palpitate. Fortunately, the energy that made their hearts palpitate was not directed at them. Otherwise, with their current suppressed state where they could not even mobilize the energy in their bodies, they would only end up turning into nothingness. However, even if the giant hand was not directed at them, at this moment, they felt as if their souls were about to be separated from their bodies. It was extremely painful. How troublesome. Hong Ming, who was facing the giant hand in the middle of the battlefield, frowned with a solemn expression. No one could sense the energy fluctuations contained in the giant hand more deeply than him. Even someone as strong as him could not help but breathe rapidly under the pressure. Fellow cultivator, I'll go first. Hong Ming tilted his head and glanced at Chu Bei. After making a decision, his body turned into billions of brilliant rays of light and met the giant hand head-on. At a closer look, one could see that within the brilliant rays of light formed by Hong Ming, there were endless galaxies circulating. All sorts of laws of the world intertwined, and it was extremely terrifying. Boom! The moment the brilliant rays of light collided with the giant hand, a low, muffled sound rang out. In the next moment, the endless power of the galaxies in the brilliant rays of light formed by Hong Ming was forced back to its original form before it could hit the giant hand. Following that, a figure was sent flying, tearing a pitch-black gap in space. Lord Hong Ming was sent flying. Lord Hong Ming is our creator. There's actually someone more powerful than him in this world. Where did that white-haired old man come from? Looking at Hong Ming, who was sent flying by the giant hand, the top experts of the 5 major worlds, including the 3 supreme gods, were all in disbelief. In their eyes, Hong Ming was invincible. They could not accept the scene before them. Fellow cultivator, why don't we attack together? This old man is more difficult to deal with than I thought. Hong Ming steadied himself and looked at Chu Bei awkwardly. Previously, he had wanted to take the initiative to shatter the giant hand and then join forces with Chu Bei to deal with the white-haired old man. Unexpectedly, he could not block the white-haired old man's first attack alone. Host, Coiling Dragon Dimension mission completed. Level 17 Commodity Authority unlocked. Mission reward. The host's cultivation base is raised to the peak of level 17. Use of Xiaohei's power once, one time, right to use a LV-20 commodity. Host, if you want to activate level 18 authority, you need to go to the Devouring Star Realm. On the battlefield, Chu Bei met Hong Ming's helpless and somewhat pleading gaze. Just as he was about to speak, the system's voice rang out in his mind. Almost at the same time, he felt his strength increase. It was a change from the peak of level 16 to the peak of level 17. In terms of the cultivation system in the perfect world, the peak of level 17 was already equivalent to the peak of Supreme Being, only one step away from true immortal. I have to use Xiaohei's power again. Sensing the aura released by the white-haired old man, Chu Bei knew that with his current strength, he would not be able to contend against him. Fellow Taoist, what do you mean? Hearing Chu Bei's words, Hong Ming frowned slightly, looking puzzled. Chu Bei smiled knowingly, but did not respond to Hong Ming. Instead, he appeared directly in front of the giant hand that was hovering in the air, ready to strike again, and pointed a finger. Boom! With a loud bang, the resplendent giant hand exploded, turned back into a dazzling golden light, and melted into the void. It was also at this moment that all the experts from the other space-time were stunned, and when they came to their senses, their faces were filled with fear. The reason why they were so flustered was not because Chu Bei had shattered the white-haired old man's giant hand with a single finger. Instead, it was because at the moment Chu Bei had pointed his finger, the power that had been suppressed within their bodies had erupted. However, this power no longer belonged to them. Instead, it had uncontrollably surged towards the mysterious man. What's going on now? My power is fading. How could this be? What did that man do to us? Along the long river of time, hundreds of experts from the other space-time revealed panicked expressions at the same time, as if they had suddenly encountered something terrible. They looked at each other in dismay, and finally cast their gazes on Chu Bei, their brows filled with fear. Previously, when the white-haired man on the golden path had attacked, the power in their bodies had been suppressed, and they had been unable to mobilize it. Although they were terrified, at least they could still sense the existence of the power in their bodies, but it was temporarily suppressed by an even more terrifying power. And now, the invisible power that had suppressed them from the white-haired old man seemed to have shattered with a loud bang. But before they had time to rejoice, the power in their bodies seemed to have been inexplicably summoned, and it left their bodies uncontrollably. They really did not dare to imagine how such an existence could exist in this world. At their level, they had already communicated with the world and could mobilize the power of the star field at any time. The power they possessed had already been incorporated into their bones, blood essence, and every cell. It could be said that every part of their bodies contained endless power. But now, to their disbelief, the power that they thought was inexhaustible was flowing away with a whoosh. Yifan, Senior Chu's cultivation has increased again. He's not weaker than that guy anymore. After looking at Chu Bei and the white-haired old man on the battlefield, his gaze fell on Yifan as he muttered to himself. At this moment, along the long river of time, only the three of them had not been deprived of their power. Naturally, he did not think that it was because he was powerful. Instead, it was because Senior Chu, who had used this divine ability, had deliberately let them go. Master really can't see through it. With a smile on his face, Yifan bowed in Chu Bei's direction. His expression was extremely respectful. Seeing this, Wu Shi and Vicious also bowed in succession to show their respect. Fellow, Yu, Hong Ming finally recovered from his absent-mindedness as he looked at the giant hand that had collapsed and dissipated. When he looked at Chu Bei again, his mouth was wide open and filled with great surprise. That exaggerated expression was as if he had just met Chu Bei and was looking at a monster. It was not at all like the creator of a large region should be. Your strength is clearly on par with mine. How did you suddenly? Zifeng stared at Chu Bei in disbelief. Just as he was about to ask how he could shatter the white-haired old man's attack, his expression changed halfway through his sentence. This was because at this moment, the power in his body began to riot. No matter how he tried to suppress it, he could not retain it all. A large amount of power began to surge toward Chu Bei. What you have seen may not necessarily be the whole story. Even now, it's still the same. As soon as his calm voice fell, Chu Bei shifted his gaze from Zifeng to the white-haired old man. His eyes narrowed. In the next moment, the golden path under the white-haired old man's feet trembled and then exploded with a boom, turning into a rain of light and dissipating. It was also at this moment that one could clearly see the space around the white-haired old man distort, and the terrifying power that was as vast as a galaxy in his body also became violent. However, unlike other experts, his power was still in his body. It was just that it was somewhat chaotic. The white-haired old man took a step forward, and the shattered golden path reformed under his feet again. He stared at Chu Bei, and his brows gradually furrowed, becoming more and more serious. Chu Bei was the same. He remained silent and only calmly met the white-haired old man's gaze. At this moment, he seemed to have become the center of this large region, and there was an endless and terrifying suction force. It was not only the power of the experts from the other space-time, but even the energy contained in the dazzling golden light in this world was stripped away and compressed to the extreme, circling around his body. Rumble. The white-haired old man attacked again. At this moment, the world was still, without any sound or energy fluctuations. In the eyes of countless experts from the other space-time, the white-haired old man stepped on the golden path and instantly appeared in front of Chu Bei. His body became illusory, as if he had merged with this world. The white-haired old man clenched his palm into a fist and punched out. There's no need for that. Chu Bei did not dodge or evade. His eyes opened, and as his indifferent voice fell, he lightly raised his right hand. Bang! The fist and palm collided. The white-haired old man's fist, which had condensed all the power of his body, was so casually received by the palm. Just when the spectating experts from the other space-time thought that the white-haired old man would attack again, the white-haired old man's body exploded with a loud bang, but it quickly healed back together. The process from collapse to healing was in fact a spark of light. Although the experts from the other space-time who were watching the battle along the long river of time were not qualified to participate in such a battle, they could still understand a little. The white-haired old man is at a disadvantage, a quasi-immortal emperor exclaimed, as if he had forgotten that the power in his body had disappeared. A real emperor. The white-haired old man pulled away from Chu Bei, as if confirming the guess in his heart, and then sighed faintly, then shook his head, as if he had given up on something. Then, the white-haired old man waved his hand, and the bright golden light dimmed. The world dissipated, and the stairway to heaven appeared again, along with the rippling round door. The battle, is it over? The white-haired old man has lost. What realm are they at? Ha, the power is back. I can leave now. Looking at the dissipating world, the experts from the other space-time froze. When they reacted, their eyes switched back and forth between Chu Bei and the white-haired old man. When they found that the disappeared power had reappeared in their bodies, they immediately shouted excitedly, without the attitude of a supreme expert at all. This is passing the last stage. Hong Ming was a little absent-minded, as if he had not yet reacted. This scene reversed too quickly, and he was a little caught off guard. When facing Zifeng, who was guarding the 99th step, he and the fellow cultivator beside him had joined forces to besiege him for a long time before forcing him to surrender. But who would have thought that when facing the white-haired old man, who was obviously stronger than him, they would pass the last step so easily? Fellow cultivator, thank you. Suppressing the excitement and shock in his heart, Hong Ming took a deep breath and cupped his fists toward Chu Bei. Previously, when the white-haired old man attacked, he knew that he was no match for him, and at that time, he had already lost any hope. In his opinion, Even if he joined forces with the fellow cultivator of unknown origin, it was absolutely impossible to pass the white-haired old man. However, what he did not expect was that the fellow cultivator beside him had actually held back in the battle with Zifeng and did not use his full strength. It could even be said that the other party had not held back a little bit, or it could be said that in the previous battle he was just playing around. Looking at the rippling door in front of him, Hong Ming did not even have the time to think about why Chu Bei was so powerful. Chapter 543. Rumble. Hong Ming took a step forward, crossed the last step, and appeared in front of the rippling door. Chu Bei stood next to Hong Ming with his hands clasped behind his back. Although his expression was calm, his heart was in turmoil just like Hong Ming's. He was also very curious about the world behind the rippling door. Lord Hong Ming's battle is over. Did that white-haired old man lose? It's the owner of All Heaven's shop. He lost to the owner of All Heaven's shop. Doesn't that mean the owner of All Heaven's shop is stronger than Lord Hong Ming? Heavens! Just where did he come from? While all the gods of the celestial realm were staring blankly at the image in the sky, Hong Ming stretched out his hands and placed them flat on the rippling door. Creak! The crisp sound of the door being pushed open rang out. A moment later, a crack appeared. Just as the gods of the 5 major worlds were about to take a closer look, the image in the sky shattered with a boom. What's going on? Why is it gone? What's behind that door? The gods of the 5 major worlds who had been concentrating all their attention suddenly paled, their expressions extremely unsightly. At the same time, at the end of the coiling dragon plane's chaotic domain, the rippling door on the sky stairway had been completely pushed open by Hong Ming. He was already halfway through the door. That's all. The experts from the other space-time were stunned. They stared blankly at the rippling door that had been pushed open. Although they could only see a corner of the door, it was enough to make their minds tremble in shock. It was an ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. To be more precise, it was a world formed by the power of laws that surpassed their level. They could only see a hazy portion of the world, and they could only roughly deduce the appearance of the world they were in. However, the aura exuded from this corner was enough to make them feel suffocated. The ones who were most deeply affected were Hong Ming and Chu Bei, who had already stepped through the door. Because the two of them were in a position that allowed them to see a much wider area than the experts from the other space-time, they were even more shocked. As expected, my path of cultivation is still long. Looking at the endless mysterious world in front of him, Hong Ming suddenly laughed. He was like a lost person who had suddenly found a way forward. Rumble. It was also at this moment that the entire region shook. In the distance, there were floating palaces. It was unknown what material these palaces were made of, but the aura they contained caused Hong Ming to palpitate. Fellow Taoist, I'll take my leave first. Hong Ming's eyes flickered with golden light. With a single step, he had already stepped on this mysterious ocean-like energy and was gradually moving further and further away. At this moment, Hong Ming seemed to have found a new place to live. His heart that had been silent for hundreds of millions of years was once again set ablaze. In the chaotic realm where he was born, he was the creator, an invincible existence. But here, his ability to control the world had become ordinary. An indescribable mysterious power that seemed to have existed in this world since ancient times had suppressed him. Due to the host's current cultivation level, the host is unable to enter the chaotic heavens. Just as Chu Bei was about to enter the hazy world in front of him, the system's voice suddenly rang in his mind. When he heard the system's voice, Chu Bei looked ahead helplessly. He really couldn't go far away like Hong Ming. This was because there was an extra layer of light around him. He didn't know if this vast region was rejecting him or if the system was stopping him. You shouldn't have let Hong Ming go. With his aptitude, I'm afraid it won't be long before he starts causing trouble. The white-haired old man looked in the direction that Hong Ming had gone, then looked at Chu Bei. After sighing, he disappeared with Zifeng. The chaotic heavens, huh? Chu Bei calmly looked at the rippling round door that was gradually closing and repeated the name that the system had said. Gradually, everything returned to how it was in the beginning. a stairway to heaven, and a tightly closed, rippling round door. Disciple Yi Fan greets master. Yi Fan immediately cupped his fists and bowed to Chu Bei when he saw Chu Bei walking over. What? This mysterious person is Yi Fan's master. When Yi Fan said this, the other experts along the river of time were all shocked and in disbelief. Among them, there were even some quasi-immortal emperors who were enemies of Yi Fan. Without hesitation, they immediately disappeared from the river of time, as if they were afraid that Chu Bei would remember them. Greetings, Senior Chu. Sensing Chu Bei's gaze, No Beginning and Vicious bowed to Chu Bei at almost the same time. Their expressions were extremely respectful. Continue moving forward. You still have a long way to go. Chu Bei nodded to No Beginning and Vicious. Master, what is behind that door? Yi Fan pointed at the rippling round door on the stairway to heaven and couldn't help but ask. No Beginning, Vicious, and the other experts from the alternate space-time along the river looked expectant as they waited for Chu Bei's answer. With your current strength, you will soon be qualified to enter the world behind that door. There, you will be able to see your master in person and not be separated by space-time barriers. Chu Bei still looked profound. With that, he glanced at the experts along the river and said, You have seen enough. It's time for you to leave. With that, Chu Bei waved his hand, and the layers of white light dispersed. Whoosh! In an instant, the river of time surged, dragging the experts from the alternate space-time along with it. Master, I will definitely enter the world behind that door as soon as possible. Yi Fan bowed to Chu Bei again before stepping onto the myriad chi cauldron and disappearing into the river of time. Above the collapsed, tranquil Heart Island in the Heaven Realm. Look, the owner of the All-Heaven shop is back. An overgod cried out when he saw the young man who had suddenly appeared above him. Why don't I see Lord Hongming? The three overgods exchanged glances, puzzlement in their eyes. He has already left. Chu Bei glanced at the three overgods and said indifferently, Left? Can it be that door? The three overgods were all guessing. Chu Bei chuckled but didn't say anything. He then walked towards Linli. Let's go. It is time to return to the Yulon continent. 3 days later. Master, you have business with your disciple? Within the courtyard, Linli quickly walked towards Chu Bei's residence. Disciple, your master has stayed here long enough. It is time for me to leave. Chu Bei looked at Linli. Master, where are you going? Linli seemed to have been prepared for this as he asked very calmly. The world behind that door. Chu Bei laughed. Linli took a deep breath. Master, your disciple will definitely go as well. Good. Your master will wait for you there. Chu Bei laughed loudly, and then, under Linli's gaze, he stepped into the space-time wheel. Chapter 544. The blue sky was like a huge blue jade, and the scorching sun was like a huge ball of fire hanging in the middle of this huge jade. Xian Region, 3rd High School. Let me tell you guys, I just asked Senior Luo Feng some questions about training. He's really patient, not like Zhang Haobai or Lu Ting at all, of course. Last time when I asked Senior Luo Feng, he also gave me a lot of pointers. Out of the 5,000 students in our 3rd high school, there are only 3 advanced members of the dojo. Zhang Haobai and Lu Ting were able to do so because their families were well off, and they were able to do so through the use of treasures. Only Senior Luo Feng is like us, coming from a normal family. He relied on his own hard work to become an advanced member. Looks like the next time I meet Senior Luo Feng, I'll have to ask for his advice. After school, a group of youths in school uniforms gathered together and chatted with each other. Feng, did you hear that? Those guys are praising you at the same time. In a stream of people not too far away from the group of youths, a large youth patted his red-clothed companion. If it were you, would you reject them? Laughed the youth named Luo Feng. I don't have talent like you, and they wouldn't even look for me, laughed Wei Wen as he rubbed his nose. Luo Feng looked at the large youth beside him and laughed. This large youth is his best friend who grew up with him. Even though they aren't blood brothers, their relationship isn't any worse than blood brothers. Rumble. At this time, an earth-shattering sound rang out. What? What's happening? Oh my God. Is it an earthquake? How is this possible? Ever since the Grand Nirvana, there hasn't been an earthquake on Earth. Look, even the air is being torn apart. The end of the world can't really be here, right? I haven't lived long enough yet. The ground suddenly shook, and gullies split open. The passers-by instantly became terrified. At this moment, not only Xi'an region, but all the cities in China and even the entire Earth were violently shaking, as if they were about to explode. Very quickly, the highest level of danger alarms sounded in every city. On the other side, the Earth Union headquarters immediately called for a meeting of the highest level. What do you guys think about this? An immeasurably powerful external force has invaded Earth. In just a few seconds, all the air defense systems were paralyzed. Fortunately, the energy immediately converged after invading Earth. Otherwise, our Earth would have ceased to exist. What is the source of this energy? I'm not sure yet. Could it be that experts from other planets are attacking us? No matter who it is, we must investigate this matter thoroughly and find the source of this energy. Otherwise, this will inevitably become a hidden danger to the safety of our Earth. The meeting of the highest level of the world was quickly concluded. Following that, countless super high-tech satellites were activated and started operating crazily, as if they were investigating something. Calm has been restored. Everything is fine now. It's great that you're still alive. I was scared to death just now. I thought the end of the world had come. I hope the news can give us an explanation as soon as possible. The shaking stopped, and all the residents patted their chests in fear. Wei Wen, stop hiding. It's all in the past. Luo Feng patted Wei Wen's arm on the main road of Xi'an Region's No. 3 high school. Can we be considered to have escaped this disaster? Wei Wen's throat twitched, his face filled with fear. At the same time, in the sky above Xi'an region, a blue hole appeared. In front of the hole, a young man in a purple robe floated. It was Chu Bei who came through the space tunnel. Looking down at the vast land that had already calmed down, Chu Bei let out a long breath. He came to Earth through the space-time wheel. As he forgot to converge his energy, the moment he arrived, Earth almost couldn't withstand his pressure and exploded. Luckily, he converged in time and didn't cause any serious consequences. As for whether this Earth was the same Earth that he lived on before he transmigrated, he didn't know. In any case, this wasn't the Earth he was familiar with. Through the information given by the system, as well as his understanding of the original work, he had a basic understanding of this world. This world once had an outbreak of the RR virus. It was after that period of time that this world completely changed. After the RR virus infection, the mortality rate was as high as 30%. According to the statistics, after 3 months of the outbreak, the world's population dropped by 2 billion. Of course, it wasn't just humans. The number of animals and plants that died around the world was also not small. After a nightmarish period of time, the surviving humans were shocked to find that there was an extra type of antibody in their bodies. Under this antibody, their bodies seemed to have been transformed. Their strength, speed, cell activity, and skin toughness all more than doubled. Even if it was just an ordinary person, they could easily break the world records of weightlifting and 100m running. However, there was another disaster that followed. Under the RR virus, the surviving birds and beasts also changed their bodies. The increase in their strength was even more terrifying than that of humans. Some of the beasts even had extraordinary intelligence. Gradually, these beasts that were transformed from birds and beasts began to attack human residences. A bloody and crazy war began. At the beginning, humans were always at a disadvantage because the firearms that they were once proud of could no longer hurt those terrifying beasts and couldn't cause fatal injuries to them. But as time passed, when something called crow alloy was developed, the situation of the war began to reverse. Because weapons made from crow alloy could easily cut through the defensive scales of those beasts. Later on, when the super high-frequency laser cannon was successfully developed and killed over 10 S-grade beasts and 2 SS-grade beasts, the monster army felt fear and stopped invading human territory. And in the following years of war, countless small countries were destroyed and their citizens either died or fled. When the war ended, there were only 5 big countries left in the world, and China was one of them. And now, On land, humans were still the majority. But some of the desolate mountains and oceans became the territory of the beasts. Since that time, the world's education was no longer based on books and knowledge, but focused on training the body. Dojos began to appear, and the path of fighters became the goal that everyone pursued. Luofeng, look in the sky, there's a huge bird. At this time, Wei Wen raised his head and exclaimed. Looking over, he saw a huge black-crowned golden eagle flying over from the distance. This black-crowned golden eagle's body was around 20 meters long, just like a large fighter jet. Its feathers faintly glowed with a cold metallic light. The feathers on its head were black, just like a black crown, and its huge sharp claws were golden yellow. Look, there's a flying-type beast. Why would it appear in our city? Could it be because of the earthquake? Not good. It's flying towards us. Because of the howling wind in the sky above the third high school, all the students in the school heard the commotion and raised their heads to look at the sky. When they saw the huge beast, their faces all changed. The black-crowned golden eagle was extremely fast. Its pair of cold blue eyes glowed with killing intent as it looked at the humans below, as if it was looking at its prey. Just as the students were exclaiming, its speed suddenly increased and instantly reached an even more terrifying speed. At the same time, an extremely high-pitched eagle cry came from its mouth. The terrifying sound wave created a visible shockwave that quickly spread out. Ruthless, the ear-piercing cry echoed in the air. Different from the deafening sound of rolling thunder, this high-pitched eagle cry was extremely sharp and numbing. The group of students only felt pain in their eardrums. They all covered their ears with their hands and screamed out in pain. Their expressions were distorted. Under the terrifying shockwave, the gigantic pieces of glass embedded in the school building let out a low cracking sound. They all cracked and turned into a pile of fragments. What a powerful beast! Luofeng's eyes stared at the huge bird that was getting closer and closer. He then pushed Wei Wen beside him. Aren't you familiar with all kinds of monsters? Hurry up and tell me where this guy came from. It's a black-crowned golden eagle. After seeing the huge bird's appearance clearly, Wei Wen took a deep breath and said with a face full of shock, What? This is a black-crowned golden eagle. Hearing the name from Wei Wen's mouth, Luofeng's eyes flashed. Clearly, he knew some information about the black-crowned golden eagle. Black-crowned golden eagle, ranked third among the eagle-type monsters. An adult black-crowned golden eagle's body length is around 20 meters and its wingspan is around 40 meters. During the Grand Nirvana period, there was a black-crowned golden eagle that charged into the army. After being hit by the fire god cannon, it wasn't damaged at all. Not even a single feather fell. Its defense was extremely strong, especially its terrifying claws, which could easily tear apart the crow alloy blade. Luofeng, I'm afraid that we won't be able to survive this time. It's coming towards us. Wei Wen suddenly pointed towards the sky. His voice was trembling as his expression changed drastically. He was extremely terrified. Looking up, the black-crowned golden eagle suddenly swooped down and extended its claws. Its target was the area where Luofeng, Wei Wen, and the others were. Under the howling wind, the students in this area immediately let out terrified cries for help. The more cowardly ones were so scared that they sat on the ground and trembled in pain. Why isn't the army here yet? Is there a problem with the air defense system? Who can save us? We didn't die in the earthquake just now, but we're going to die under the claws of this huge bird? I'm so unlucky. Where's the city guard army? Please, hurry up and come out. If only there were fighters here, they'd definitely be able to kill this huge bird. In an instant, the area where Luofeng was at became chaotic as cries and shouts continued. Chapter 545. Luofeng, can you save my life? Wei Wen's body trembled as he looked towards Luofeng for help. Under this wild wind, it was extremely difficult for him to even take half a step. Old Wei, you probably know more about the black-crowned golden eagle than I do. Even if a fighter came, it would be useless. Luofeng's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but more of it was helplessness. Ruthlessness. The screeching continued. As the screeching continued, the black-crowned eagle appeared above Luo Feng and the others. Its sharp claws reached down. Luo Feng, it's Su Exine. At this time, Wei Wen screamed again. Luo Feng also saw the person that the black-crowned eagle's claws were about to grab. His face turned pale and his eyes were filled with worry. It was a ponytailed girl wearing jeans and a white polo shirt. From her expression, one could tell that she was terrified and helpless. "No, don't!" Luo Feng screamed. He wanted to run towards the ponytailed girl, but because of the wild wind, he couldn't move forward either. A sense of helplessness arose. Su Exine, a name that made Luo Feng's heart beat faster. She was also the girl that Luo Feng had a crush on for countless years. Rumble. However, just as the sharp claws were about to pierce through the ponytailed girl, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. In the next moment, the black-crowned golden eagle's gigantic body seemed to have been squeezed by an invisible force and exploded, filling the sky with blood and flesh. Before the blood and flesh could scatter, the invisible force swept through and instantly turned the blood and flesh into nothingness. After that, the ear-piercing sound wave disappeared. The howling wind stopped, and everything returned to normal. It disappeared. "No, that huge eagle is dead. I just saw it explode." "I saw it too. But where did its body go?" "If that's the case, then we escaped another disaster." "Haha, if you survive a disaster, you're destined for good fortune. We're fine. Did someone make a move? Could it be an extremely powerful fighter?" After the black-crowned golden eagle's death and disappearance, the area that was filled with fear gradually returned to normal and was filled with laughter. "Su Exine, are you all right?" And just as the crowd was cheering, Luo Feng used his fastest speed to fly to Su Exine's side, his affectionate gaze filled with worry. "I'm fine. I just don't know who saved me." Su Exine nodded towards Luo Feng. Then, like the others, she moved her head and looked around. "Look, someone has appeared. It's actually hovering in midair. It must be him who killed the black-crowned golden eagle and saved us." Chu Bei appeared in the air above Luo Feng and the others and instantly became the focus of all the students in this area. "Were you the one who saved me?" Su Exine looked at Chu Bei, her eyes filled with respect and nervousness. She was just a high school student. Naturally, she was a little nervous when facing an expert who could kill the black-crowned golden eagle. "Your name is Su Exine?" Chu Bei smiled as he looked at the ponytailed girl. This was the name he heard from Luo Feng. Yeah, the ponytailed girl nodded towards Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled knowingly. He then looked towards Luo Feng and smiled. "Then are you called Luo Feng?" "Sir, you. How do you know my name?" After hearing Chu Bei say his name, Luo Feng's mouth opened wide. After coming back to his senses, he quickly said, "Thank you, sir, for killing the black-crowned golden eagle." Luo Feng's eyes were filled with gratitude. As an elite member of the dojo, he was certain that the mysterious person in front of him was one of the top fighters. Because of this, he was extremely respectful. It's just that he couldn't figure out how an existence like this could say his name. Chu Bei smiled and didn't answer Luo Feng's question. His gaze switched between Su Exine and Luo Feng, and the smile on his face became even wider. He didn't think that the moment he appeared, he would meet the main character of this dimension and even save his future partner. After meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Luo Feng and Su Exine looked at each other. Their faces were filled with confusion, as if they couldn't figure out why Chu Bei was looking at them so weirdly. Mission 1. Host signs a contract with Luo Feng, and at this time, the system's voice rang in Chu Bei's consciousness. Chu Bei's expression didn't change much, as if he already expected this first mission. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as Chu Bei was thinking about how to sign a contract with Luo Feng, the sound of air breaking rang. Several small golden fighter jets flew over and landed in Jian Region's 3rd high school. To be more precise, they landed in the area where the black-crowned golden eagle was originally going to land. "Look, the people from the Alliance Army and the Dojo of Limits are here. They're too late. If it weren't for that, sir, we would probably be dead by now under the claws of that huge bird." "Don't say that. This is an emergency, so they need time to get here." Looking at the men walking down from the fighter jets, a group of students discussed quietly. Hello, I'm Zhang Tian, an instructor of the Dojo of Limits. The middle-aged man in a black robe, who seemed to be the leader of the group, scanned his surroundings and his gaze landed on Chu Bei. He frowned and then extended his hand to greet him. What? He's Zhang Tian. I actually got to see his real body. I heard that he's one of the 3 strongest people in our and Dojo of Limits. A warlord-level fighter. Hearing Zhang Tian's name, the eyes of the group of high school students, who were originally full of resentment, instantly lit up. Their faces were all filled with respect. Luo Feng, is he really that Zhang Tian? Wei Wen pushed Luo Feng's arm as he swallowed his saliva. He's mysterious, and I'm only an advanced student in the Dojo of Limits. What right do I have to see him? Luo Feng rolled his eyes at Wei Wen and looked at the middle-aged man in a black robe with respect. Ever since the Grand Nirvana period, humans have been on the path of training. Once they become fighters, they'll be respected. Among martial artists, according to their strength, they could be divided into the warrior level, the warlord level, and the extremely rare war god level. Among them, warrior-level fighters are the most numerous. Most fighters stay at the warrior level for their entire lives. This level can be further divided into beginner warrior, intermediate warrior, and advanced warrior. Warrior-level fighters can usually be killed with firearms, but warlord-level fighters above the warrior level cannot be killed with firearms. Compared to warriors, warlords far surpass warriors in terms of reaction time and speed. When faced with firearms, such as heavy machine guns, warlords could easily avoid them. Looking at the current alliance, warrior-level fighters were the elites of the elites. In a place like Xi'an region, the number of warlord-level fighters can be counted with 2 hands. And this Zhang Tian is an advanced warlord, a powerful existence that's about to become a war god. Because of this, when the group of students, including Luo Feng, heard Zhang Tian's name, they all revealed expressions of admiration. Chapter 546. As for the war gods above the warlord level, they were even rarer. There were less than 100 of them in the entire alliance. Each of these people could easily walk through a rain of bullets. They were as fast as lightning, and their reactions were unbelievably fast. A casual punch or kick could destroy a building. My name is Zhang Tian. May I know who you are? Seeing that Chu Bei only smiled at him and did not even extend his hand, Zhang Tian's face turned ugly. After a moment of silence, Zhang Tian spoke again, but this time there was a hint of anger in his voice. You just need to know that I have no enmity towards you. Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Zhang Tian with a smile. He still did not say where he came from. Did you kill the black-crowned golden eagle just now? Zhang Tian did not ask any further. He frowned and went straight to the point. When the black-crowned golden eagle appeared, he noticed it, but because of the distance, he could not rush over immediately. However, when he arrived, all he saw was the black-crowned golden eagle's body exploding. Then, it mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Just as he did not know what to do, a figure suddenly appeared in his line of sight. A guy who was different from ordinary people, and whom he could not see through was Chu Bei. I just did it casually. Don't be too nervous. Chu Bei said casually. Since you can kill the black-crowned golden eagle, you must be a warlord-level martial artist. With your strength, if I'm not wrong, you should have been chosen by the major forces long ago. May I know which force you belong to? Zhang Tian asked again. I don't belong to any force. Chu Bei had a playful look on his face. There's no point in you asking any more about me, because I won't tell you. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Zhang Tian and the leader of the Alliance Army, Li Yuan, looked at each other and their faces became even gloomier. After the two of them exchanged glances, they nodded as if they had made some kind of unanimous decision. Friend, your strength can no longer be treated as a normal person. For this reason, we need to find out where you came from. Since you are not willing to cooperate, we can only wrong you for the time being and take you away. Zhang Tian and Li Yuan shouted at the same time. Then, the two of them stomped on the ground with their right feet and soared into the air, reaching out their hands to grab Chu Bei. Bang! However, Before Jiang Tian and Li Yuan could get within 1 meter of Chu Bei, a low rumble could be heard. In the next moment, the two of them crashed into the ground like cannonballs, as if they had been hit by some kind of heavy blow, creating a large circular crater. Almost at the same time, a mournful and painful wail rang out, and the sound of bones breaking could be faintly heard. What is going on? How did Lord Jiang Tian and Lord Li Yuan get injured all of a sudden? Could it be because of that mysterious lord? But I didn't see him do anything. Quick, let's go and see how the two lords are doing. Looking at the two silhouettes in the crater, the fighters from the dojo of Limits and the Alliance army all had expressions of fear. Their gazes towards Chu Bei were filled with fear. The faces of the students who witnessed this scene all changed. It was as if they were struck by lightning on a clear day, or as if a bucket of cold water was poured over them from head to toe. Their entire bodies were numb. This scene happened too suddenly and unexpectedly, and it caught them off guard. Jiang Tian and Li Yuan, two warrior-level powerhouses, were seriously injured just like that without any warning, especially the former, who is a powerful existence that is about to step into the war god level. My god, just what is the background of that lord? If he really did this, then wouldn't he be a war god? Wei Wen took in a deep breath. His expression was so shocked that it was hard for him to get any more shocked. It was as if he had been struck by lightning, and he looked like a clay statue. Luo Feng and Su Xian were also dumbfounded. Their brains seemed to have lost the ability to think. They stood in place like wooden blocks and stared dumbly at Chu Bei, who was in the air. Fate brought us together, so I'll give you an opportunity. Chu Bei's gaze returned to Luo Feng's body. Come with me. As his calm voice landed, a ripple appeared on the surface of Luo Feng's body and his body disappeared. Of course, Chu Bei, who was in the air, also disappeared. He disappeared. Luo Feng's gone. After a while, Wei Wen, Su Xian, and the group of students finally reacted. They all looked at the empty spot where Chu Bei and Luo Feng used to be, and their mouths opened even wider. Quick, call the head. I have something important to report. Immediately call the Supreme Army Commander. And at this moment, the heavily injured Jiang Tian and Li Yuan climbed out of the crater. Their weak voices were filled with anxiety. Xi'an Region, Central Skyscraper, 108th floor Sky Garden. Luo Feng glanced at the glass wall on the right that looked like a cliff and couldn't help but to shiver. If he fell, he would definitely become a pile of meat paste. Sir, may I know why you brought me here? Suppressing the fear in his heart, Luo Feng swallowed his saliva and looked at Chu Bei with a face full of anxiety. Don't be nervous, Chu Bei smiled as he looked at Luo Feng. I said before, you and I are fated. I brought you here to give you an opportunity. Opportunity? Luo Feng's face was filled with curiosity as he muttered, the little girl I just saved is your crush, right? Chu Bei looked at Luo Feng with a face full of smiles. Cough, cough, sir. You must be joking. After hearing Chu Bei's teasing, Luo Feng's face reddened. What does this have to do with the opportunity that sir is talking about? If I didn't make a move in time, what would have happened to that little girl? Chu Bei asked back. This? After hearing Chu Bei's question, Luo Feng's expression froze and he couldn't help but to clench his fists. If this sir didn't make a move before, Su Xian would probably have died under the sharp claws of the black-crowned golden eagle. Only when you're strong enough will you have the ability to protect the people you want to protect. If I didn't make a move before, and you took care of the black-crowned golden eagle, that little girl might have already thrown herself at you. Chu Bei's smile became even wider. Luo Feng nodded his head in approval. Sir, of course I want to become a fighter and become someone as strong as you. And I'm working hard towards this goal. It's just that your training speed is too slow, and you don't have any resources or guidance, right? Chu Bei spoke Luo Feng's mind. Luo Feng nodded his head again and sighed, as if he was helpless. Then how about you become my disciple? Chu Bei smiled and didn't beat around the bush, going straight to the point. Luo Feng froze at first, then his expression became excited. Sir, you want to take me as your disciple. You and I are fated, so you can receive my inheritance, Chu Bei continued. Disciple Luo Feng greets teacher. Luo Feng reacted quickly, and immediately bowed towards Chu Bei. To become my disciple, you need to do a short ceremony after saying that. Chu Bei waved his right hand and a ring appeared in his palm. Disciple, drop a drop of blood into the ring. Yes, teacher. After receiving the proxy ring, under Chu Bei's instructions, he didn't hesitate to bite open his index finger and drop a drop of blood into the ring. Host has successfully signed a Level 1 proxy contract with Luo Feng. Level 18 Commodity Authority has been activated 15%. Level 1 proxy gift package released. After signing the contract, the system sound rang in Chu Bei's head. Luo Feng, since you already called me teacher, then I'll give you a gift for becoming my disciple. Chu Bei opened the gift bag, and there was also a sparkling and translucent pill inside. Smells so good. Luo Feng took the pill and sniffed it. After exchanging glances with Chu Bei, he threw it into his mouth. Teacher, what did you give your disciple to eat? There seems to be a huge amount of energy in my body after a while. Luo Feng stretched his body and opened his eyes wide. His face was filled with excitement. After swallowing the pill, he felt that every cell, every bone, and every piece of flesh in his body was filled with a terrifying amount of energy. Teacher, my body seems to have changed. I have a special ability. After a few seconds, Luo Feng exclaimed out loud. For some reason, he gained the ability to fly. Also, he gained control of a mysterious power that can absorb and swallow everything in sight. After devouring these things, the power in his body actually increased slightly. However, for the current him, there's a limit to how much he can swallow. He still has to slowly digest it. The pill you ate before is called the swallowing pill. The extra energy in your body is called the swallowing pill. As you develop it, you can swallow everything in the world. After saying that, Chu Bei pointed his finger. Suddenly, the space at the tip of his finger twisted and a huge hole appeared. Outside the hole, countless stars could be seen. Endless amounts of star energy crazily poured into Chu Bei's finger. Even the space can be swallowed. Looking at the scene in front of him, Luo Feng was shocked. His body started to tremble. After coming back to his senses, he was extremely excited. Thank you, teacher, for giving me this opportunity. After taking a deep breath, Luo Feng once again kowtowed towards Chu Bei. For the next period of time, follow me and cultivate by my side. Chu Bei nodded with satisfaction. Luo Feng nodded heavily and said, Teacher, before that, I want to go back and tell my parents so that they won't worry. I'll go with you. After saying that with a smile, Chu Bei and Luo Feng's figures disappeared. Chapter 547. On the other side, Alliance Headquarters. This was an extremely large area. Other than the silver-white courtyard walls, there was a tall, dark blue skyscraper. This skyscraper was engraved with 4 eye-catching words, Alliance Headquarters. This was the highest decision-making place of the human alliance. Outside the Alliance's courtyard walls, there were armed guards everywhere. This area gave people the feeling that it was a monster armed to the teeth. Mr. Hong, we're only waiting for you. An armed guard respectfully followed behind a man in black. The man in black was 9 meters tall. He had short hair and sharp eyes. At first glance, he gave people the feeling that he was a long spear that wanted to pierce through the sky. As for his age, there wasn't a single wrinkle on his face. He looked like a young man in his 20s. However, his temperament was clearly not something that someone his age could possess. The man in black was called Hong. He was the dojo of Limit's master and the strongest person in the alliance. As the man in black walked through the door, all the higher-ups in the hall instantly looked over. Hong, you're still the same. Late as always. A tall man walked up and gave Hong a hard punch. The tall man was called Thor. He was the second strongest person in the alliance. You should all know about the mysterious man that appeared in Jian District. Hong sat next to Thor and said, We've already investigated him. We couldn't find any information about him. To be able to kill the black-crowned golden eagle so easily, he must at least have the strength of an intermediate warlord. But what I don't understand is that from the surveillance video, the moment the black-crowned golden eagle was killed, all the pieces of flesh mysteriously disappeared as if they suddenly evaporated. Zhang Tian is an advanced warlord. According to his description, he was heavily injured by an invisible force before he even got close to that person. Even war gods can't do that, right? What's even scarier is that through facial recognition, this person doesn't exist in the Alliance. It's as if he appeared out of thin air. In the Alliance headquarters main hall, a surveillance video appeared on a large projection screen. The content of this video was the process of Chu Bei killing the black-crowned golden eagle to heavily injuring Jiang Tian. At this moment, the higher-ups of the Alliance, including Hong and Thor, were discussing. If he really doesn't belong to the Alliance, then he is an invader. Could it be that he's from another planet? A high-ranking official guest with a solemn expression. Do you still remember the energy fluctuation that almost destroyed the Earth that was detected earlier? Hong seemed to have thought of something at this moment and asked, "What? You're saying that the mysterious external energy that suddenly appeared and quickly disappeared has something to do with him?" No way. That energy can destroy the Earth. How can it be related to a person? Hearing Hong's words, the faces of the upper echelons in the hall changed abruptly, and each of them revealed a look of astonishment. Although I am known as the strongest in the Alliance, I know that we have only just begun our journey of cultivation. Hong shook his head and said again, Hong is right. There is an even higher realm above our realm. It's just that we haven't stepped into it yet. The god of thunder nodded, clearly agreeing with Hong's words. Do you mean that the mysterious man's strength might really be above yours? A senior member asked. Let's not talk about his strength for now. What we need to do now is to find this person as quickly as possible. Another senior member said, let's use that Luo Feng, who was taken away, as a lead. If we find him, don't alert him. Someone who can easily injure Jiang Tian is definitely not someone a normal fighter can deal with. Another senior member suggested, South Shore Sector, a sector formed by a large number of tube-shaped apartments. It was also a sector built by the government for cheap housing. Luo Feng lived here since he was young for a total of 18 years. In a room on the 32nd floor of a residential building, two shadows appeared out of thin air. As soon as they entered the room, Chu Bei frowned, because there were two types of crying in the room. Hearing the crying, the most anxious one was naturally Luo Feng. His originally excited expression from being able to become Chu Bei's disciple instantly turned ugly. His family had a total of 4 people. Other than him, there were his parents and his brother. And the two crying voices in the room came from his mother and his brother. Mom, what's wrong? Why are you crying all of a sudden? Without any hesitation, Luo Feng immediately ran to the balcony. Looking over, he saw a middle-aged woman lying next to a wheelchair, hugging the youth in the wheelchair and crying. Bro, you're back. On the wheelchair, the sickly white-skinned skinny youth saw Luo Feng and wiped his tears. His voice carried a hint of sobbing. Luo Hua, what happened at home? Where's Dad? Luo Feng immediately asked. Dad, he was taken away by the young master of the Zhang family. They even hit Dad, Luo Hua said while crying. Which young master of the Zhang family? Why did they hit Dad? And they even took him away. Luo Feng frowned. I think he's called Zhang Haobai. He said something about Dad breaking their family's jade, so he wants us to pay for it. Dad said he didn't do it. So they hit Dad and dragged him away. Luo Hua's voice was choked with sobs. Zhang Haobai, you're looking to die. After hearing Luo Hua's words, Luo Feng clenched his fists. His veins popped out and his eyes were filled with rage. Luo Feng turned around and was about to leave after he yelled coldly with monstrous rage. Feng, where are you going? Come back here. I've already called the police. The middle-aged woman hurriedly pulled Luo Feng's arm. Our father must have been wronged. They dared to hit Dad, so I'll make them pay back 100 times over. Luo Feng was burning with rage. We can't beat them, so don't go, the middle-aged woman sobbed. The middle-aged woman sobbed and hurriedly pointed at Chu Bei and said, Feng, this is? Seeing who the middle-aged woman pointed at, Luo Feng first suppressed his rage and then introduced Chu Bei. Master, this is my mother. After Luo Feng pointed at the middle-aged woman, he pointed at the skinny youth in the wheelchair. He's my brother Luo Hua. When he was young, his legs were crushed by a car. From his thighs down, He's been relying on a wheelchair ever since. When introducing the skinny youth, Luo Feng's eyes clearly flashed with a hint of pity. Feng, when did you have a master? Is it a master from the dojo of limits? You guys haven't eaten yet, right? I'll go cook for you guys. Hearing how Luo Feng addressed Chu Bei, Gong Xianlong politely greeted Chu Bei. No need, Chu Bei smiled as he stopped Gong Xianlong, who was about to cook. He then looked at Luo Hua in the wheelchair and waved his sleeve. In the next moment, a ripple wrapped around Luo Hua's legs and let out a bright light. Pain itch. Suddenly, Luo Hua hugged his legs and let out a painful yell. Hua, can you feel your legs? Gong Xianlong froze at first, then immediately crouched down and hugged Luo Hua's legs as she asked impatiently. Rip. With that, a crisp sound rang and Luo Hua couldn't help but stand up from his wheelchair. It's fine. Mom, brother. My legs are fine. Haha, I can walk now. Luo Hua walked back and forth as he yelled excitedly. What just happened? Is it because God sees that our Min family is too pitiful and is protecting us? Gong Xianlong went up and hugged Luo Hua tightly. After crying tears of joy, she immediately clasped her hands together and closed her eyes, as if she was thanking the heavens. Luo Feng was also extremely happy, but he still knelt down in front of Chu Bei. Master, I didn't think that you had such a godly ability. Thank you for healing my brother's legs and allowing him to leave his wheelchair after hearing Luo Feng's words. Gong Xianlong and Luo Hua also woke up and knelt down in front of Chu Bei, thanking him profusely. Get up. This was just something I did along the way. Chu Bei held up the three people in front of him and then looked towards Luo Feng. Let's go. Use your current strength to bring your father back, okay? Luo Feng replied and nodded heavily. His eyes were once again filled with anger. Chapter 548. Sky Capital Garden. Compared to the South Shore sector where the poor live, Sky Capital Garden is where the rich and powerful gather in the Xian region. At this moment, in the private courtyard of a villa, painful screams could be heard. In the courtyard, 3 middle-aged men were being beaten up by 6 tall men wearing the same bodyguard uniform. Not far away, a young man wearing a white t-shirt and white pants was coldly watching. Young Master Zhang, the cracks on your jade really have nothing to do with us. On the floor, one of the middle-aged men who was curled up from the beating howled. If you can't pay for it, then get your renovation company to pay for it. Zhang Haobai's face was full of disdain as he glanced at the 3 middle-aged men who were rolling on the floor in pain. Of course, he knew that the cracks on the jade had nothing to do with them. This was just a way for him to get some pocket money. In the Xian region, his Zhang family has a lot of connections and has a bit of power. A few normal laborers are nothing. Zhang Haobai, where's my dad? At this moment, a furious roar came from outside the courtyard. In the next moment, a shadow rushed into the house. When the shadow saw the curled-up body on the floor with bloody footprints all over his face, his expression became extremely ferocious. His eyes were filled with killing intent, as if he was a mad lion. Hearing the roar, the 6 bodyguards and Zhang Haobai immediately turned their heads. Luo Feng, you actually dared to barge into my house. After recognizing the person, Zhang Haobai froze for a moment, then couldn't help but to yell angrily. Feng, why are you here? There's nothing for you to do here. Hurry up and go back. Luo Hongwu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and hurriedly waved his hand at Luo Feng, signaling for him to leave. I really didn't expect this old guy to be your dad. If that's the case, then you'll have to pay back the money he owes me. If you can't pay it back, then don't even think about leaving this house today. Zhang Haobai looked at Luo Feng with a face full of mockery and a sinister smile on his face. You all deserve to die. Luo Feng's gaze locked onto Luo Hongwu's body, which was covered in wounds and gasping for air. His eyes immediately became bloodshot. Ever since he was born, his father had been the main source of income for the family. All the hardships he had suffered outside had never been shown at home. Not only was he a competent husband, he was also a competent father. But who would have thought that he would be beaten up like this today? Luo Feng, are you really not afraid of death? Why are you looking at me like that? Sensing Luo Feng's gaze, Zhang Haobai's face immediately darkened. He yelled towards the bodyguards beside him, "Beat him!" After receiving Zhang Haobai's order, one of the 6 bodyguards sneered as he walked towards Luo Feng. "Die, all of you." Looking at the short, fat man walking over, and then looking at the curled-up, wounded Luo Honghua on the ground, Luo Feng roared. Following that, a heavy kick was delivered at lightning speed. Bang! The short and fat bodyguard immediately raised his right arm to block, but in the next moment, his pupils suddenly dilated, and he let out a scream. Then, he was sent flying in the air. Not long after, his fat body sank into the wall, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. This, looking at their comrade who had sunk into the wall, they didn't know if he was dead or alive. The other 5 bodyguards were shocked. Their pupils shrunk, and fear appeared in their eyes. "What are you guys waiting for? Go, all of you go." Zhang Haobai seemed to have been shocked by the strength of Luo Feng's punch. "Kid, you sure are vicious." After seeing the strength of Luo Feng's kick, the other 5 bodyguards clearly became more cautious and carefully moved towards Luo Feng. When they were less than a meter away from Luo Feng, the 5 bodyguards looked at each other. Then, as if they made a decision at the same time, they attacked Luo Feng together. "Using numbers to bully and injuring my dad. You all deserve to die." Luo Feng's voice became colder and colder. Unknowingly, his fist was covered in a layer of black light. With one punch, the 5 bodyguards who were originally punching towards Luo Feng suddenly slipped. Their feet left the ground and flew uncontrollably towards Luo Feng's fist. "Ah!" Along with a loud bang, the 5 bodyguards let out a blood-curdling scream. And at this moment, Zhang Haobai and the middle-aged man who was curled up on the ground had an expression of disbelief. Especially Zhang Haobai, his face was even paler than before. The 5 bodyguards seemed to have been sucked in by an invisible force as they huddled together. Their bodies were covered in a black mist, and their expressions were twisted. With a rumble, they were swallowed by the black light on Luo Feng's fist and disappeared. "No! Impossible! What did you do to them? Where did they go?" Witnessing this scene, Zhang Haobai stared at Luo Feng in fear. He couldn't understand how Luo Feng became so terrifying in just a day. After coming back to his senses, Zhang Haobai instinctively pushed backwards and pressed the alarm button on the wall. In an instant, an ear-piercing alarm rang throughout the entire Zhang family mansion. "Zhang Haobai, you targeted me in school, but I tolerated you. However, you should never, ever have crossed my bottom line and hurt my family." Luo Feng's gaze was cold as he walked towards Zhang Haobai step by step. "You, don't come any closer. I'm also an advanced student." Looking at Luo Feng, who was getting closer and closer, Zhang Haobai's body trembled and his voice trembled. "Do as you wish, don't worry about anything. People like this don't deserve to die." Noticing the hesitation in Luo Feng's eyes, Chu Bei opened his mouth. "Thank you, master. Your disciple understands." Luo Feng nodded and his gaze became determined. After that, Luo Feng's muscles tightened. His feet stepped on the ground and his body shot out like a cannonball. His fist emitted a black light. "Luo Feng, I'm warning you." In fear, Zhang Haobai clenched his fist. However, before he could finish his threatening words, the power he gathered on his fist was swallowed by an invisible force. In the next moment, the flesh on his entire body began to move, as if it was about to leave his body. He didn't even have time to scream before he lost consciousness with a rumble and was swallowed by the black light on Zhang Haobai's fist. "Feng, you. Luo Honghua acted like it was his first time meeting Luo Feng. His face was filled with shock as he sized Luo Feng up. "Dad, I had a chance encounter. In terms of strength, I'm confident that I can defeat warlord-level fighters." Luo Feng supported Luo Honghua. "Ta-ta-ta. Who called the police just now? And who are you people? Where is the owner?" At this time, hurried footsteps sounded. Very quickly, a group of fully armed Alliance soldiers rushed in. They all held laser guns in their hands. Their eyes scanned Luo Feng and the others as they questioned. "Boss, you? Look at that person." At this time, a soldier pushed the officer beside him and pointed at Chu Bei. The officer followed the voice and looked at Chu Bei. With one look, his expression froze. Just 15 minutes ago, they received a search order from the highest level, which included a surveillance video. This order was for them to find a person. After they find this person, they can't do anything. All they need to do is report to the higher-ups as soon as possible. And this person is the Chu Bei in front of them. Boss, what do we do now? The soldier who first recognized Chu Bei asked the officer beside him. Just pretend we never came here. After hesitating for a few seconds, the officer made a decision and immediately retreated with the group of soldiers. Master, after they took a look at you, why did they mysteriously retreat? Looking at the group of Alliance army that was quickly leaving, Luo Feng looked at Chu Bei with a puzzled expression. How would I know? Chu Bei smiled as he looked at Luo Feng and shrugged his shoulders. He knew that he was already noticed by the higher-ups on this planet, but he didn't care. Feng, when did you get a master? Luo Hongwa politely greeted Chu Bei. Chu Bei smiled and waved his sleeve. A ripple swept across Luo Hongwa and his colleagues. In an instant, the wounds on the three of them disappeared, and they recovered to their original state. Feeling the changes in their bodies, Luo Hongwa and the other two looked at Chu Bei like they were looking at a monster. It was only after a long while that he thanked Chu Bei repeatedly. After that, Chu Bei brought Luo Hongwa back to his home. Atlantic Plate, Warbase. Ever since the Grand Nirvana period, the ocean has become a paradise for monsters. In order to prevent monsters from suddenly invading, the Human Alliance built close to 100 war bases at the border between the ocean and the land. Every base has a perfect attack and defense system. As the sun set in the west, the afterglow shone into the war base. A group of Alliance soldiers were patrolling with laser guns. Rumble. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound came from the distant sea. Oh my God! Look! What kind of monster is that? How come I've never seen it before? Look at its size. It has to be an Emperor-level monster. Immediately notify everyone. After a while, the entire warbase rang with an ear-piercing alarm. It was also at this moment that the warbase, which was still slightly loose, was suddenly wound up. All the Alliance soldiers returned to their posts and prepared to welcome the battle. Looking closely, it was a monster that was more than 200 meters long and looked like a lion. Its entire body was covered with black scales. The scales flickered with a cold light that made people feel cold. In addition, it also had a pair of wings that were at least 300 meters wide and seemed to be made of steel, and that horn that seemed to pierce through the sky. The black horn was wrapped with golden patterns that spread all the way to the neck, back, and tail. At first glance, its body seemed to be covered in a layer of gold and black armor. The most frightening thing was its pair of dark golden eyes. They were like the eyes of a god, looking down on everything in the world. Roar. Above the sea, the huge monster let out a roar. Its eyes were filled with savagery, cold, tyrannical. For the Alliance army, this was a terrifying existence that had never been recorded. Chapter 549. Not good. It's coming. Quick, use the laser cannons to kill it. So what if it's an Emperor-level monster? I can't even count the number of them killed by the laser cannons with 2 hands. Looking at the approaching behemoth, the expressions of the Alliance soldiers in the base changed, but they were still confident. After all, the laser cannons were one of the strongest weapons in the Human Alliance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 laser beams blasted out, instantly bombarding the scales of the monster on the surface of the sea. However, after the explosion, the laser beams disappeared, but the monster's scales were not damaged at all. How is this possible? Is it really just an Emperor-level monster? Even the most powerful laser cannons can't hurt it. It didn't even break its scales. The laser cannons are not working. Quickly report the situation to the Alliance headquarters. Looking at the unscathed monster on the surface of the sea, the Alliance army in the war base suddenly revealed a look of shock. Woo! The monster on the surface of the sea seemed to be provoked. It let out a low growl like a god that echoed in the boundless sea. Just as the single-horned monster let out a low growl, all the monsters in the sea made a sound of fear. It was a pressure that came from the soul. While growling, the monster looked at the war base. Then, it opened its mouth. Rumble. Then, the sky darkened and the space around the monster's mouth began to distort. In the next moment, the entire war base flew up and flew towards the monster's mouth. During this process, the war base quickly shrunk until it was about the size of the monster's mouth and was swallowed. It's gone. The war base is gone. It was swallowed by the monster. What is its origin? Even Emperor-level monsters don't have this ability. On a sentry tower some distance away from the war base, a group of soldiers were pale. Their faces were filled with fear as if they saw a ghost during the day. Splash! The sea water churned and two more roars came from the bottom of the sea. Then, two huge sea monsters broke out of the water. Behind them, countless other sea monsters rushed out. They looked at the mysterious and terrifying monster with the ability to devour as if they were looking at a god. That's the 8-clawed demonic octopus and the sea serpent dragon, two emperor-level monsters. They actually bowed down in front of that monster. The first two sea monsters to appear, one of them was an 8-clawed octopus that looked like a floating island. The other one was similar to a dragon that was over 1,000 meters long in Chinese mythology. Its entire body was covered in lightning. After recognizing the two sea monsters, the soldiers on the sentry tower in the distance staggered and sat on the ground. Their faces were pale. Roar! The mysterious horned beast let out another roar, and a terrifying sound wave spread out in all directions. Under its lead, all the sea monsters, including the two, began to move into the Human Alliance's world. Half an hour later, Alliance headquarters. In the conference hall, more than 50 high-ranking officials in golden robes had already taken their seats. What's going on now? Why did they suddenly? Could it be that there's a new development regarding that mysterious guy? Who knows? The group of high-ranking officials discussed spiritedly. The strongest in the Alliance, Hong, and the second strongest, Thunder God, sat down together. Everyone, the reason why I called you here so urgently is because the Human Alliance is about to face a terrible disaster. This disaster is not inferior to the Grand Nirvana era. The Alliance leader opened his mouth. His face was extremely ugly. He continued, "It's very likely that this is a disaster for the Human Alliance. It's the end of the world." Leader, what's going on? Hearing the Alliance leader's words, the faces of everyone in the conference room changed. They were anxious and couldn't wait to know the whole story. Regarding what I want to say, you should take a look at this video from the front line of the battlefield. The Alliance leader took a deep breath. His expression was extremely serious. In the conference room, as the Alliance leader's voice fell, a video appeared on the giant screen behind him. In the video, it was a scene of the sun setting in the west. That's a military base in the Atlantic plate. Why is this being played out of nowhere? Is something going to happen there? What's going on? The eyes of the higher-ups were focused on the screen. They frowned slightly. The military base was originally peaceful. However, suddenly, a black shadow broke out of the water and floated in front of the military base. This was a mysterious monster that no one had ever seen before. Strong claws, a pair of giant wings covered in scales, a powerful tail, a single horn that pierced the sky, and a pair of cold and emotionless dark golden eyes. What kind of monster is this? It's at least 200 meters long. It's an unfamiliar big guy. There have never been any records of it before. The end of the world? Could it be related to it? What kind of monster is this? Every military base has a perfect attack and defense system. Can't the laser cannons do anything to it? Looking at the mysterious monster in the sky, the higher-ups thought of the Alliance leader's serious words. They couldn't help but frown. Compared to the others, the strongest person, Hong, and the second strongest person, Thunder God, had a look of fear in their eyes. The moment they saw this mysterious monster, they felt an inexplicable sense of fear. Rumble. The image on the screen shook, and a loud sound was heard. Then, the mysterious monster opened its mouth and sucked, directly swallowing the entire military base. This is impossible. This is crazy. It ate an entire military base. Seeing this scene, the higher-ups were so shocked that they stood up from their chairs. At this moment, they fell into a daze. The scene in the video was completely beyond the scope of their logical thinking. It couldn't be explained by science at all. Did you see that? This mysterious monster has a terrifying ability. It directly swallowed an entire military base that was several times larger than its body. Among them, 50,000 Alliance soldiers were all eaten. Not a single one survived. The Alliance leader took a deep breath. His voice was filled with anxiety. Then, without waiting for the others to respond, the Alliance leader let out a long sigh. But the disaster has just begun. Then, the image on the screen continued to change. With the mysterious monster as the leader, the two beast emperors and countless sea monsters listened to its command and began to attack the human alliance. What was even more terrifying was that a similar scene happened again. The mysterious monster actually swallowed another military base. Gradually, everyone in the conference hall fell silent. In the video, the mysterious monster continued to move along the sea. Wherever it passed, all the military bases were swallowed. Everyone, what do you think we should do now? After a long time, the alliance leader looked at the other higher-ups in the conference hall. His face was filled with anxiety. The higher-ups looked at each other. Their expressions were solemn. No one answered. As of just now, the death toll has reached 300,000. When he said this, the alliance leader clenched his fists. His eyes were bloodshot. The higher-ups became even more silent. Their ugly expressions were like a heavy boulder pressing down on their hearts. After all, that was 350,000 lives. We can't allow it to continue to be so rampant. At this moment, the strongest person, Hong, slammed the table and got up to walk out. I'll go with you. The second strongest person, Thunder God, followed behind Hong with a sharp gaze. Hong, what level is this mysterious monster? How much do you know about it? The alliance leader asked. I can confirm that it has surpassed the Emperor level. As for its information, I don't know. However, Clarence C. definitely knows. On the other side, Master, where is this? Luo Feng looked curiously at Chu Bei. After leaving home, he was brought to this unknown mysterious place by his master. In front of him, there was a strange silver-white metal door covered in dust. 20,000 meters underground. Chu Bei smiled as he looked at Luo Feng. What? 20,000 meters? Don't tell me, this is an archaeological ruin that has never been discovered before? Hearing Chu Bei's words, Luo Feng was excited. Ever since the Grand Nirvana, humanity's power has increased tremendously. They have also successfully discovered many archaeological ruins. And within these archaeological ruins, there are often huge opportunities. According to rumors, the strongest and second strongest, Thunder God, both receive the inheritance of the archaeological ruins. And because of this, their power far surpassed others. The reason I brought you here is to give you something suitable. Just as Chu Bei finished speaking, with a kacha sound, the white metal door exploded open. Corpse. Corpse. Luo Feng's gaze pierced through the door and saw a corner of it. His expression froze. That's right. The first thing that entered his field of vision was a gigantic corpse. This gigantic corpse was covered in a special engraved armor. The skin that was exposed outside was extremely dark. A pair of blood-red eyes were wide open, as if they were about to pop out. Master, this, facing the gaze of the gigantic corpse, Luo Feng's body couldn't help but to tremble. This feeling was like an ant facing a huge dragon. Even though it was only a corpse, the cold light emanating from its eyes was still extremely terrifying. Just one look was enough to make one's heart palpitate, and one couldn't help but to break out in cold sweat. Master, what level of fighter was he when he was alive? He must have surpassed the war god level. Luo Feng looked towards Chu Bei. He pointed at the corpse and took in a deep breath. From what he knows, fighters can be divided into warrior, war general, and war god levels. Each level can be further divided into smaller levels. From what he can see, The gaze of this corpse that has been dead for who knows how many years made his heart palpitate. He must have surpassed the war god level like Hong and Thunder God. Chu Bei looked at Luo Feng and only laughed. He didn't answer Luo Feng's question about the corpse and continued forward. Luo Feng didn't ask any more questions and immediately followed. Soon enough, they arrived at a super semicircular, gorgeous hall that was dozens of meters tall and 200 meters wide. After arriving at the hall, Luo Feng's expression completely froze. He was extremely shocked. As he scanned his surroundings, he saw that there were a total of 5 strangely shaped corpses in the hall. These 5 corpses were all lifelike and didn't have any signs of decay. If it weren't for the lack of life, they would be no different from living people. Chapter 550. Chu Bei and Luo Feng entered the beautiful semicircular hall. There were 5 eye-catching corpses. The first corpse looked like a giant chimpanzee. It was half kneeling on the ground, and its armor was broken. The second corpse looked like a human. It was covered in black scales and had a horn on its forehead. Other than that, it also had a tail covered in scales. The third corpse was around 10 meters tall and had a turtle shell on its back. If you look closely, it looked like an extremely intricate armor. The fourth corpse was completely copper in color, as if it was made out of copper. In the center of its chest, there was a huge hole, as if it was pierced by a hand. The strange thing was that the hole in its chest was still made out of a strange copper material. There were no organs. The fifth corpse was exactly the same as a human: yellow skin, black hair, and a scar on his face. He was calmly sitting cross-legged on the ground with a layer of dust covering his body. Chinese! Chinese! Luo Feng exclaimed as he looked at the characteristics of the corpse. Even though this corpse with the characteristics of a Chinese is already dead, the corpse was still releasing power. It was even stronger than the first corpse he saw. His intuition told him that this dead Chinese fighter was definitely stronger than Hong and Thunder God. He was tens of millions of times stronger than him. Master, please explain to your disciple. Who were these corpses when they were alive? No, some of them weren't even human. Luo Feng's gaze moved away from the corpses and landed on Chu Bei's body as he swallowed his saliva. Beep! Before Chu Bei could answer Luo Feng's question, a mechanical sound rang. In the next moment, the dim hall suddenly lit up and a dazzling light shot down from above. After that, a black translucent figure slowly appeared where the strange light intersected. It looked like a child with a horn on its forehead. Its eyes were blood red and it wore a black robe. A piece of trash, the horned child walked past Chu Bei and glanced at him. He shook his head with a face full of disdain. Brain expanse 22, barely passable. I don't want to make do, so I'll take you. The single-horned child looked at Luo Feng and frowned. Then, he sighed, as if he had made a helpless choice. Who are you? After hearing the horned child's evaluation of Chu Bei, Luo Feng's tone towards the horned child wasn't good. I've been waiting here for 50,000 years. The single-horned child didn't introduce himself. He just kept shaking his head. The humans on your planet are really bad. It took me 50,000 years to find someone like you who can barely make it. What? You said you waited for 50,000 years. Luo Feng opened his mouth wide. You little brat. You've already lived for 50,000 years? Are you kidding me? You people from this planet really haven't seen the world, making a fuss over nothing. The single-horned child looked at Luo Feng with disdain and pointed at the corpses on the ground. They were all peerless figures in the vast universe when they were alive. They were all beings who could easily live for hundreds of thousands of years. To us, tens of thousands of years is nothing. Just like them, even if they die, their corpses will remain eternal. Then how did they die? Luo Feng asked. His face was filled with disbelief as he looked at the single-horned child who had lived for over 50,000 years. Because the master died, they had to be buried with him. The single-horned child looked at Luo Feng. Since I had no choice but to choose you, then come with me to pay respects to the master. When the single-horned child finished speaking, a chi-chi sound suddenly came from the center of the luxurious hall. After that, The metal floor split apart and revealed a pathway. "Follow me." The single-horned child looked at Luofeng and waved his hand. "Master, I—" Luofeng didn't rush forward. Instead, he looked at Chu Bei and pointed at the single-horned child's back. However, before Luofeng could finish speaking, he saw Chu Bei smile and nod, indicating for him to follow. Pay respects to its master? What kind of existence is that? Luofeng followed the single-horned child. At this moment, he was filled with confusion. My name is Babada. In essence, I am a type of AI. However, there are different levels of AI cores. The simple logic processing programs on your planet don't have the right to be called AI. To be able to be called AI, at least their thinking isn't inferior to humans. As for me, even though I am an AI, because I have followed the master for countless years, I have already surpassed the level of AI. I can be called an AI life form, an existence similar to you humans. The single-horned child walked in front and suddenly opened his mouth to introduce himself. The more Luofeng heard, the more shocked he became. The way he looked at the single-horned child also became more and more shocked. Rumble. After walking for a few dozen meters, a loud noise suddenly sounded and the ground trembled. After that, a transparent crystal coffin floated out from the ground. The moment the crystal coffin appeared, the entire space was instantly filled with coldness. Looking over, there was a corpse lying in the coffin. He was about 3 meters tall and had 2 flexible antennae on his forehead. Other than the antennae and his body being slightly larger, he looked exactly the same as a human from the Alliance. He wore a black robe that glowed with specks of light. His long hair was loose, and he calmly laid on the crystal coffin as if he was asleep. His appearance was very handsome, and his pair of long and narrow eyes appeared even more feminine. Even though he was only a corpse right now, he still had a strange charm that could shake one's soul. Master, I've found your inheritor. Seeing the corpse, the single-horned boy hugged a corner of the crystal coffin as tears dripped down from the corner of his eyes. Kid, kneel. After crying, the single-horned boy suddenly turned around and looked at Luofeng as he gave an unquestionable order. Luofeng froze. After looking at Chu Bei, he didn't do anything. I told you to kneel. Didn't you hear me? The single-horned child's expression became ferocious. A wild energy surged within his body. My master is the master of Unimo planet, and you are about to receive his inheritance. In other words, you are now my master's disciple. Shouldn't you kneel? Become your master's disciple? Luofeng frowned and sneered. I already have a master. How can I become your master's disciple? Even if you are the strongest person on this planet, how can you be compared to my master? In front of my master, you are not even an ant. The single-horned child sneered. His face was filled with disdain. Who is your master? I'll go catch him right now and kill him. Don't be rude to my master. Luofeng stared angrily at the single-horned child. His face was gloomy as he subconsciously looked at Chu Bei. Noticing Luofeng's gaze, the single-horned child sized up Chu Bei and said with disdain, Could he be the master you're talking about? Just a piece of trash. I've already heard the same thing twice from you. This time, without waiting for Luofeng to speak, Chu Bei calmly looked at the single-horned child and spoke first. Isn't a guy with a mind of one not a piece of trash? The single-horned child's tone was filled with mockery. With someone like you, you can only be an apprentice for the rest of your life. Rumble. Just as the single-horned child finished speaking with disdain, his body trembled and the space around him began to violently shake. Almost at the same time, a terrifying energy wave surged out from his body. In an instant, the rocks around him began to float from the ground and tremble. Feeling the sudden terrifying energy, Luofeng swallowed his saliva and looked at the single-horned child in shock. Don't talk about my master. Even in my eyes, you are just an ant, the single-horned child snorted. The single-horned child coldly snorted. Terrifying sound waves intertwined and surged towards Chu Bei. Boom. However, just as the sound waves were about to reach Chu Bei, there was a loud explosion and the terrifying sound waves were annihilated. After that, an even more berserk energy exploded. Like a surging river, it instantly covered the single-horned child's energy. In the next moment, the single-horned child let out a scream. The energy waves that were originally coming from the single-horned child's body suddenly disappeared. As for the single-horned child, it was as if his entire body was hit by a heavy blow that he couldn't resist. Like a cannonball, he fiercely smashed into the wall. No! Impossible! The single-horned child flew out from the wall. His body let out a crackling sound, as if a part of a machine was broken. At this moment, he looked at Chu Bei in shock. His shocked gaze was as if he had just met Chu Bei. His face was filled with shock. Why? Your mental capacity is clearly only one. The single-horned child's eyes shot out two beams of light and landed on Chu Bei's body. As he looked at him again, he muttered to himself. What happened before his eyes had completely broken his understanding of the past tens of thousands of years. He couldn't figure out or understand the mysterious power that had bombarded him just now. His opponent's mental capacity was clearly the lowest. Logically speaking, his strength should at most be at the student level. However, the reality was that the invisible energy from before made him unable to resist at all. Are you afraid? Sensing the single-horned child's fear, Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile and revealed a playful expression. You are not from this planet. The single-horned child looked at Chu Bei with great fear and stepped back. However, before he could take 3 steps away, an invisible tyrannical energy appeared out of thin air around his body. Then, his body was uncontrollably bound by this energy. His legs left the ground and flew toward Chu Bei. Sometimes, what you know is not necessarily correct. After saying this with a smile, Chu Bei pointed his finger between the single-horned child's eyebrows. Buzz. Accompanied by a trembling sound, the single-horned child opened his mouth wide and his expression twisted in pain. At the same time, the single-horned child's aura suddenly dropped at this moment and became very chaotic. Who are you? What is your purpose of coming here? The single-horned child seemed to have suffered a great loss of vitality. His aura was obviously much weaker. The reason why I'm here is actually because of you. I wanted to persuade you, but now it's much easier. Chu Bei's smile grew wider. After saying this coldly, he pointed his finger between Babata's eyebrows again. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.